session to order. Visitors, Diane and Alan, welcome.
Good evening. Thanks so much for allowing me some time to be here. I just have a couple remarks and then I'll let Alan take the floor as well. He can tell you a little bit about himself. I'm the executive director for PMEA, a role I've served in for now 7 years. Time flies by. I've worked at the state level and at the federal level, doing a lot of lobbying over the years, worked for 2 governors. So I kind of came to PMEA with a lot of experience and really happy to represent the 35 public power communities in Pennsylvania. You guys are so unique, and it's probably not a month that goes by that I don't have at least one phone call from some other municipality in the state going, how do we do this? Can't really do it so easily today unless you have already been serving your communities that way. So we are your voice in Harrisburg and DC, but we also provide a lot of services to our members. We do obviously a lot of information. We do a lot of surveys across our members, sharing information, just keeping on top of what's happening. But then we also provide training for line crew and for the superintendents. I know Chris has come to several of our trainings. So we have those opportunities throughout the year. We typically do about 5 different training courses over the course of the year, as well as the superintendent's meeting. And then we have our big annual conference in September. You're all welcome to come. We have our business workshop right before the conference begins, and then the actual conference this year really focused on a lot of important things that are happening around the country, just in terms of energy and electricity, but also we're going to take a look at some of the operational challenges that our public power communities are facing. In addition to that, as part of your membership in PMEA, you have access to the sort of our partners, which are have expertise in different areas. So you have access to Salson Hughes if you have really specific legal questions as they relate to the electric operations. You have access to utility engineers, which I think is already your engineer, but if you wanted that access, you would have some other additional access to them. And then you have access to Minor Center, which can help you with studies or hiring for a new personnel specific to electric. And so those are some of the things that we have available to our members. It's, as you, I'm sure, see in the news and hear all the time, the pressure on rates because of the capacity costs that have been increasing in the PJM market. We're getting ready to see that happen again as we go through another capacity auction in July of this year, when we still have the cap in place on rate on that capacity auction high point. It'll likely, almost assuredly, come in at that high point of 335. So that will obviously have some impact. That is for delivery year 28-29. So all the auctions that have been held up to this point have affected every year up until that point. So we'll see more pressures on rates as a result of that capacity auction, and we'll see if that also, they are able to procure enough capacity. And then, there are lots of other dynamics that are happening at the PJM level that will trickle down and impact all of you, that have to do with, how do we add generation? How quickly can we add generation? Pennsylvania itself, through Team PA, the governor's office and the PUC are doing a study about how to take some of these sort of decommissioned sites or mothballed sites and try to get them up and being reused, either with the same type of energy source or something new. And they hope to come out with a report later this year. So that may potentially, obviously, I think, will help with Pennsylvania's needs. We're already a net exporter of energy to the PJM grid. This will just add more, but obviously some of that will also probably be used for data centers, which is all the talk, as I'm sure you've heard. So anyway, I'll introduce Alan, and then we'll stick around, and I'm happy to answer some questions after his remarks.
Thank you, Diane. Good evening, Madam Council President, Vice President, and Mayor, and council members. It's my pleasure to be here this evening. I'd like to share a few thoughts with you. Some of them might be new to me, but I imagine you'll hear a lot of things that you've discussed before. My name is Alan Kaufman. I am a former elected person of the Council of Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. I serve as a council person, the Vice President of Council, the President of Council, and also on several occasions as the acting mayor. My term of service was actually 32 years and it expired January of this year. So I'm freshly out of office. I was looking for things to do, and I think I may have found some place where I can help. My purpose for being here this evening is to stress the importance of operating an electric utility, the role of PMEA, the 35 communities that make up PMEA, and some of the things that they do, and also talk very, very briefly about the Chambersburg electric operation. At the end of that, I'd like to open it up for some questions if you have any, and we can try to answer those for you. As far as operating a utility, as a council, as a governing body, you set the rate of your electricity. There's no PUC involved in this. You set the rate, and you actually run the utility. There's no outside involvement really needed, other than what you may get from consultants and maybe from your solicitor or our solicitor. Obviously, it's a local concern. It's a good thing. It brings money back into your community in various ways. It gives you low rates, and it also gives you a sense of urgency to get people back into having their power on after you have some sort of a natural disaster or storm or whatever it may be. That's very important to people, and anybody that's dealing with the larger electrical companies know how much of a problem that can be. But anyway, the lower rates, the high reliability that you get from a local utility can't be beat. I can tell you in my years as a council person, when people talk to me about things that they liked, I was always told that one of the things that they really liked about us was our utilities. Actually, we run all of our utilities, including a gas utility, and people loved it because they knew it was going to get service, they knew it was reliable, and they knew it was less expensive than anything else they could get. For instance, our gas rates in Chambersburg, our people are paying half of what people outside Chambersburg pay. And our size of our borough is 6.8 square miles, so it's not a very big area, as you can see. Our electric customers right now are paying about 40% less than what other people are paying from the various owned big suppliers of electricity. I'm going to jump now real quickly to PMEA for a couple of seconds. As you know, it's made up of 35 members, 2 of which are represented here tonight, Chambersburg and also your borough. The good thing about PMEA, I think, is as I've gone to the conferences through the years, is a lot of interest is put into legislative updates. And I don't know how much you deal with Harrisburg or Washington, but as you know, things can move very, very fast or very, very slow in Washington, D.C. And it seems like the buzzwords right now seem to be artificial intelligence, data centers, and the grid, PJM, and FERC. Those things are all very complex things to be understood, and you can learn to understand those a lot through PMEA and what training that they give. Again, Diane has mentioned the situation where they'll have a yearly meeting. Actually, it's going to be the 9th through the 11th of September. It's in Bedford. on the Bedford Springs in Bedford, Pennsylvania. It's about a mile south of the town of Bedford. If you haven't been there before, you owe it to yourself to go to it. And I can tell you, this conference is a good one, because if I'm not mistaken, Diane, the only thing they pay for is the transportation of the people to come, right?
Oh,
Yeah, okay. So anyway, it's one of the least expensive things that you deal with as an elected official. They do a lot of organization and training for line crews, for superintendents, and so forth. What I would really like to emphasize this evening is members of these 35 committees need to be involved. And as much as I hate to stand here and tell you this, of our council of 10 that I worked with over the last 4 years, it's hard to get people to go to conferences. I can tell you, in this case with electricity, there's probably nothing that's more important to you as a borough, as a utility that you run, than electricity. The market changes very fast, a lot of misinformation, a lot of information flowing. You need to be able to sort through it, and you get that by going to conferences such as the PMEA conference. One of the things that Diane didn't mention, I'll take the opportunity to mention, is a newsletter. It's called The Live Wire. I don't know whether any of you have seen it, but in Chambersburg, what they've done is sent to our borough secretary, and then she does distribution via email so that everybody gets a chance to read it and see what's going on in Harrisburg and elsewhere. I'm going to go to the last portion of things that I wanted to bring up this evening, some general thoughts about Chambersburg and maybe electricity in general. Yes, we do use consultants. One of them that we use is GDS Associates of Marietta, Georgia. Garrett Cole, he is involved with us deeply in planning for the future. They're involved with our buys that we make. We buy power 2 times a year, spring and fall. And the other thing that happened to us over the last year we actually joined AMP. That was a new thing for us. We had not been a member of AMP before, and I think you folks are. Good organization. I wish I'd had more time to get into it as an elected person, but it didn't work out that way this year. The other thing is, as far as our energy, a lot of people talk about renewable energy, and that's one of the things that we've been able to talk about a little bit. We have 25% of our energy which is renewable, and that is a very, very important thing to some folks in this day and age. I've been involved, Borough's been involved with APPA, American Public Power Association. I actually sat on the board of one of their committees for about 4 years. And one of the other things I'd like to talk very briefly about is pilots. Payment in lieu of taxes. Ours provides about 15% of our general fund, and that amount is $2.5 million a year. What do we use that for? Well, in our case, we use that primarily to pay for our police force and our firemen. We have a fully paid police and fire service in Chambersburg. They are not inexpensive, but they're well worth the money that we pay for them. The capital project funding is also done through our electric rates. And also the third thing that's included in that with our electric rates is administrative charges that we have that are given to the electric department. All departments share in our administrative costs, engineering department, legal, and so on and so forth. So that's 3 things that we actually share money with our electric utility. That's probably about what I have here. One last thought I would like to say. As a council president, I got a lot of things over the last several years where people were trying to buy either a water service, sewer service, maybe electric in some cases. And I can tell you, watching the trend, people that have gone down that road and looked at that big dollar value of money that's coming from the buyer, a lot of them will take it. And it's a terrible mistake for them to make, because once they do that, they've lost any control over any of the rates. And the same thing could be said for electric rates. You lose control over it, you give up a utility, you'll never be able to buy it back. So just a word of what I've seen over the past couple of years. So I guess really, the final thing would be the PMEA conference in Bedford, the 9th through September of 2026 in Bedford Springs. We hope to see you all there. It's a nice place to go. And we're looking for questions, and if you have any, thank you.
I have a chunk. Do other folks want to ask their questions first or not? Okay. So, Ms. Bosick, you mentioned that the PMEA coordinates on training, on a bunch of other things. Do you guys do any economic policy training?
In terms of how that relates to the electric department, it is built in, you might say, into our business workshop that happens annually at the beginning of the annual conference.
Okay.
Those sessions are all geared toward the economics and operations of the electric utility.
Yeah. Do you have slides from that you could share with us?
Sure, I have last year's presentations. This year's will obviously not be available until the conference comes around. But we have some individuals from Baker Tilly coming to present, and
Perfect.
so we'll have a good lineup this year.
That's perfect. If you could share those slides with Margaret, and then she can forward those to us. Do you do any training on how to set transfers?
We do not. Last 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago at the business workshop, we did have APPA, our National Association, come and present on pilots because they have done a national study. And then, so they did come to the business workshop and present on that.
Got it. I imagine you all have a great relationship with them. We're a member as well, I'm guessing. Would it be possible to get those slides as well from that presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
I still have all the
Okay.
PowerPoints.
If a municipality has questions about how to set rates, is that something they can reach out to the PMEA for help on?
They can reach out to us. However, what we typically don't, we can only tell what other communities are doing. That's what we would share information about what others are doing. We would then direct them, depending on the context of what they're looking for, we would direct them to Salzman Hughes or utility engineers, or if it required more than that, we would probably refer them through a set-aside program that we have. We might refer them to GDS or somebody, depending on the type of rate study that they're doing.
GDS is a new one for me. Is GDS a engineering firm, a CPA firm? What does GDS do?
They're primarily an engineering firm, but they do a lot of work in the utility space.
Wonderful. So is it fair to say they're a competitor to Norm?
I would say not necessarily, because they're in two different worlds, right?
Okay.
I mean, Norm is more boots on the ground. GDS is more focused on helping people understand rate structures, rate studies. They do some engineering, but that's not primarily what we would use them for. And they're actually going to be at the conference in September.
Perfect.
They're going to be on a panel where we're going to talk about generation projects.
Great.
And rates and market, and the
Okay.
market.
So PMEA helps kind of facilitate coordination amongst rates between the members. Is that fair? But you don't obviously make recommendations on rates.
We do not make recommendations. We share information. It is obviously up to the elected officials to make those decisions.
Perfect. And then on policy, so non-rate policy, things like are we going to have a low-income assistance program? Are we going to buy back solar? Are we going to allow like multi-parcel virtual aggregation, things like that? Does PMEA have any training on that?
So what we typically do when there are special issues that crop up, like right now, obviously data centers is big in a lot of communities. So at the conference this year, we will be presenting a model ordinance on data centers for the communities to look at, and then obviously you can tailor it to your needs. A couple of years ago, we did one on pole attachments. So what we do is, from time to time, depending on how widespread the issue is in the interest, we do have legal counsel prepare model ordinances and other documents to accompany that to help councils make informed decisions.
Okay, so it's fair to say that PMEA is more actively involved then on like the model ordinance side. Like you'll actually give us a, hey, we have this problem. Here's the PMEA best practice version of how to do policy.
Right. We have, well, it's dated right now. It's in the middle of a revision. We do have an old best practices, if you want to call it that, an old policy manual for electric operations. It was kind of, this is like, the standard. That was developed several years ago. It's right now in the process of revision. We hope that maybe in September it'll be released.
Yeah, that's fair. Tell me about the supply side, right? So I hear rates, right? There's generally the ability to talk amongst the 35, and PMEA facilitates that as the trade association. Tell me about the supply side. I mean, when we work with Norm, how many of the members work with Norm?
Probably most of the members work with utility engineers. Norm and his
team.
the other engineers at utility engineers, and then in special cases, people who don't have direct relationship will reach out, and then Norm goes in and assists on specific issues.
Is that like 30 of the 35 work with Norm?
I would say probably 28 have utility engineers.
Okay, perfect. So other than AMP, where do people buy from?
They could go direct to the market, which is what Chambersburg does.
Yeah, you guys are pretty big though. Right?
Yeah, they're the largest, and so they're constant, and they also have generation, so that makes it a little different too, because they can sell back to the grid. So they're selling back to PJM from time to time, but they're in the open market, looking and buying. So you could do that, but you have to have expertise, and that's time consuming.
Yeah, of course.
And the downside is, unless you have some generation, it's harder to control your destiny in that respect.
So is it fair to say that like 30 of the 35 buy from AMP because they work with Norm and Norm works with AMP?
Actually, I want to say AMP membership is now, excluding Chambersburg because they're a non-power purchase community with AMP, I want to say we are at 32.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Norm helped a ton last fall was like a bonkers time, right? It was very, very hard for everyone trying to set pricing, whether you were an IOU, public power, anyone. During that process, Norm said to council in a work session that we would never be able to beat our nearest IOU citizens on price. Right now, they're very small and very weird, right? But he said we would never beat them. When I hear Chambersburg is 40% below IOU, that makes a lot of sense to me because they have generation, and you're only transferring enough to give 15%. When I look at the APPA power report, you're gonna have to excuse me. I'm colorblind, so I do not know what it says for Pennsylvania, but can you help me? What is the savings rate there? This is the American Public Power Association numbers.
I think it's the 20 to 30%.
Okay, so Pennsylvania is 20 to 30% below. Chambersburg is 40% below. Norm, who's the expert for 28 of the 35, is telling Mifflinburg that we can't beat our nearest competitor. Do you have any insight on why that is?
But you do beat them in price to compare, at least the closest IOU, right? In price to compare.
I would say in some of the rate categories.
Yes.
They aren't structured all completely the
Right.
same.
That's the challenge, is because you can't just look at compare a bill to a bill, let's say. Because the price to compare for an IOU is very different than you have to break down that bill with transmission, distribution, capacity costs. All of that is into the rate structures, which is a little bit different than how our public power communities are structuring rates. So it's very challenging. And every September we do a rate study, and for all of the 35 communities, and compare to the and we have the IOU rates in there. So every year, everybody gets the information to see where they are. You are certainly by no means anywhere near the highest in terms of the 35.
Got it. So other folks are higher than us, but
Yes.
when Norm said we would never beat Citizens, Norm was wrong. That's what you're saying.
Well, I don't know what citizens' rates are. I am only thinking of the very large IOUs. I would have to go back and look at our rate study and see where Citizens
That
is,
feels
and
fair.
actually how their rate structure is,
Uh,
and their tariff with the PUC.
Makes sense to me. Go ahead, Dave, if you'd like to
The rates
interject.
of the surrounding municipalities vary widely too, I would think. So maybe Chambersburg's way cheaper because they have very expensive neighbors.
I was gonna say Chambersburg is just, I guess I would say Chambersburg is huge.
Right.
They have, and they're-
11,500 meters.
and we have maybe 2,000, so just a big difference there. They have all the utilities, and they're very kind and share information whenever asked. And they employ close to 400 people. We have 25 when we're fully staffed, so just vastly different. And they do have an engineering staff that they employ. And they work to both, I think, buy power, they peak shave, we have a generation plant for peak shaving, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's what they use your
They,
gas for.
yeah, they also, they generate from waste, they generate some power from a landfill that's nearby.
Landfill, yes.
Yeah, so they just have a lot of stuff, and those are some of the advantages that I think help their rates.
So they have better economies of scale.
Well, and that's one of the things that we will be discussing in September at the conference is how can we take essentially their model, but how can we do joint generation projects that would ease the financial burden on the utilities, particularly as we continue to see the rate pressures from the capacity auctions and just the changing dynamics of energy and markets. So we'll be talking about that because we think there are real great opportunities to explore in doing joint generation. And we have the authority to do that. We can do that as a group.
Great. On your website, you talk about municipal debt, and you specifically say that projects can be 25% cheaper if municipalities take advantage of municipal bonds. Can you explain why that is?
I don't deal with the specifics of the financing side,
Okay.
so I would not feel comfortable answering that question.
I think that's very
And again,
fair.
we're, one of the things when it comes to the electric generation, that's why we're encouraging municipalities to think about how we can do this together collectively, because that will reduce any kind of financing burden for an individual municipality.
Mr. Kaufman, can you explain how municipal bonds save money over IOU or just not using municipal debt?
Would you repeat that, please?
Municipal debt, right? On the PMEA website, it says that using municipal bonds can save public power utilities 25% on project costs. Can you guys explain how that works?
I would say that we've gone out and gotten some bonds over the last couple of years, and we got very good percentages on the interest part of it.
Mhm.
That would be my overall explanation of it right now.
Got it. So,
Going back real quickly, we were talking about who's the lowest cost and so forth. Right now, I think Chambersburg's number 4. We've had times that we were at least up to number 2, but the number 1 for many years has been the little village of Mont Alto. Now, Mont Alto probably has 300 meters. They have no electric power workers, and when something goes down, they have to go to the outside to get it. So their overhead to run their system is next to nothing unless they get hammered with some huge natural disaster. So that helps it too, and it depends on how much money they want to make on selling their electricity. It's their choice. Whatever they decide the rate's going to be, that's what it is. And they've been number 1 for a lot of years.
got it. So if I wanted to get a more thorough answer on how municipal bonds save money for municipalities, who would the PMEA recommend I go to? So I'm not sure I convinced the room yet.
APPA.
The APPA. We should invite them. Okay. Can you talk to me about electricity capital reserve size? Either with respect to how Chambersburg does things, or if the PMEA has any training on financial best practices with respect to what size a capital reserve should be.
Go back and rephrase that.
Yep. Our capital reserve is 15 months of revenue. I've been told by multiple folks independently now that 3 months of revenue is considered best practice. Does the PME have any view, or would either of you like to share, on what the appropriate size of an electricity capital reserve should be?
I'll take a shot at it. It depends on how aggressive you want to be with the actual material you have in your system. For us, it's transformers, rebuilding generators, rebuilding engines that power those things, and it's what we decide to put into it. Obviously, ours would be much more than a lot of other people, because we've got millions of dollars tied up into various multi-fuel engines. So just last year, I think we spent like $1.5 million to rebuild 3 1960s vintage diesel dual fuel engines. So how aggressive do you want to be? That would be my answer. You'd have to look into the future. What do you want to do next year, 5 years from now? We've planned out, we've got PowerBoard out to 2030 now. So I don't know, I'm not quite sure how to answer your question. It depends on how aggressive and what updates you want to do in your system and how much money you're going to need to do it.
Okay.
And I think we would not make a specific recommendation on the amount, but we do have had in the best practices a recommendation for how to do a formula to keep for your reserves. And I think, I want to say 2 years ago at the business workshop, we did talk about reserves, and one of the presenters, and I'm not sure, I think Bethany this year at the business workshop will be touching on that as well for capital reserves.
Great. So in those past slides from last year, will it have that formula on how to calculate best practice capital reserve?
So there was a presenter from, I want to say Dallas, Texas, that came 2 years ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was a female presenter,
Yes.
I can't remember her name. She had some good information
Yes.
about that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Mr. Kaufman, you noted that municipalities can set rates wherever they want based on how much profit they want to make on their electricity. Why doesn't Chambersburg set its rates higher and say reduce your property taxes?
Well, that's a good question. And one of the things with that, depending on who you talk to, some people would say we keep our utility rates low because we have a relatively high millage rate on real estate. We're at about 27.5 mils right now. We're allowed to go to 30, that's it, then you're out of luck. The other problem that we have, since we've touched into that arena now, is Franklin County has not reassessed property since 1961. It's the oldest county in the state that hasn't done a reassessment, 1961. Everything that they do has to go back to 1961 values. There's houses that are built today that have things in it that didn't even exist in 1961. The county commissioners don't want to do it, obviously. They don't want to raise taxes, they don't want to spend the money to do it. So one of the thoughts has been, we've got to keep our utilities low, but they've got to be almost 100% reliable all the time. And hopefully that money that people save on that, they'll be able to use for their taxes. That's been the rationale.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's fair to say there are absolutely no rules whatsoever on rates. With we have a pool project coming up, for example, and if I wanted to charge 30 cents a kilowatt hour next year to fund the pool project, that would be totally cool. No issues.
Well, I'm not sure I would phrase it that way. I mean, I think there are a couple of things to keep in mind. One is obviously there's you're the local decision makers and you have to respond to your community. So yeah, they're in that respect, right? You're almost like the board of directors of the IOU, but you're much more responsive to your communities than they are to their ratepayers. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the other is that we would always suggest, right, that you consider right? What's the what everybody else is doing, right? In terms of looking at the other 35, looking across the country to see best practices, what people are doing, that you consider what is an appropriate structure for that transfer from the electric fund to the general fund in order to make the things happen in the communities that you want to have happen.
Gotcha.
And lots of communities use their electric fund for the police department, for the fire department, for community facilities, libraries, other things.
Mhm. How many of the members of the PMEA have a property tax?
Oh, I think there are only 3 that do not.
You're in one of them. You know
Yes,
that,
I know
right?
that.
Okay.
Lakely's another one, and
So-
they're bigger than you.
Okay. So I'm going to read from the APPA, a 2018 document that they laid out on pilots and transfers. It says, if the electric system transfers significantly more to the local government than a normal business would pay in local property taxes, the excess may be viewed as an additional tax hidden in electric rates. While not a recommended practice, sometimes local officials prefer to increase utility revenue transfers even at the expense of higher electricity rates rather than increase the local property taxes on homes and businesses. So, Mr. Kaufman, you were on the policy-making committee for the APPA. Why do you think what Mifflinburg and the other 2 municipalities are doing with respect to our transfers is not a recommended practice?
Why it's not a recommended practice?
Yeah. Why is it not a good idea to do exactly what we're doing?
Well, I can only tell you that the pilot is something that actually the utility doesn't have to pay to the borough, and they do, and it does help us with our budget without a doubt. Why we don't take more than that, I don't know. It seems to be satisfying the needs of the community by doing that. Going back to the capital items that you're talking about, capital reserve, let me just insert there. We ran into that exact problem about 3 or 4 years ago, that we had next to nothing left in our capital reserves, but yet our electric rate was we were probably in the number 2 position. So there's definitely a relationship between a low rate, which the people want, but you've got to be setting some money back to take care of things that need to be replaced. Transformers, telephone poles, things like that have to be done. So we got to the point where we came up with a plan to have 3 different rate increases. The first one was 11.3%, I believe, and then I think it went to like 1.5%, and then maybe 0.5%. That was to get our capital reserves back to where it should have been. And actually, at that time, the big power brokers were taking a whole lot more than that. They were at 20 or whatever when they did their raises. So people didn't like it, but they were probably seeing half of what an IOU would be charging their folks.
I do want to say, though, this is your decision. What you decide to do in terms of property taxes or not have property taxes in terms of your transfer is your decision as council. That's not for us to tell you what to do or to tell any public power community what to do. You have that authority. So you can make those decisions if you choose to say, okay, we're not gonna transfer 100%. We are going to institute a property tax. That's your choice.
Thank you. So do you think it reflects well on public power when a municipality uses electricity as a hidden tax?
I would not call it a hidden tax.
The
And I will
APPA
say
just called it a hidden tax.
That's what adds. I will tell you, there are communities, public power communities around the country, right? Every state, except Hawaii, has public power communities. And everybody is vastly different in how they treat this issue. So, you're not alone in this. And again, it is all in your hands to decide what to do. So if you consider it a hidden tax and you want to do something different, It's in your power to do that.
Great. But we're not with 35. We're not with 34. We're with 2 others, right? There are 2 others that do this.
Yeah, but of the others, they're all over the place in terms of the amounts too. You can't, and it's the same thing nationally. It's very different across the country.
Okay. So I think we're almost done. Thank you, by the way. I appreciate you guys being here. The premise here that the IOUs answer to the ratepayers is not a complete picture.
Well, certainly not.
The
But I'm not here to bash the IOUs. I would love to, but I'm not.
The IOUs also answer to the PUC, right? We do not answer to a PUC. We answer to a ballot box, right? The premise that the ballot box, okay, is capable of being informed enough about electricity and this hidden tax, that's my language, not yours, and the APPA's language, not yours, is deeply problematic. And I was hopeful today that the PMEA would help. I think what I'm understanding is the PMEA's position is that this is a local issue, right? It is on our council to decide how to do this.
Yes.
I think you should very much reconsider that, because Mifflinburg and the other municipalities that are using a necessity as a tax, we are very, very bad actors. And that's my language. That's my personal language. That's not the council. They do not agree with me. This is me. We are very, very bad actors in this public power space right now. It does not look good, right, to use a thing that people use to heat their homes as a tax. It is unbelievably regressive and very, very bad.
I think you would have to ask your citizens that question, right? Would they rather pay property taxes or higher utilities? That's up to you, again, up to you. We are happy to provide more information, happy to, whatever you would like, but that's not ours to dictate what you should do.
Thank you.
I think to kind of follow up on what Diana said here, when we're talking about the 35 communities that make up the MEA, you won't find any 2 of them that are alike. Every one of them is different. They all have their own set of problems. They all have different populations. Some generate, some don't generate. It's all over the map. As you dig further into this, and you start looking at things like PJM, you're all familiar with the acronym PJM, I'm assuming, or you're not? Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland. How about FERC? Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Those are not PJM, but FERC is a federal organization there. I went to a class 2 years ago when I was with APPA to learn about FERC. I spent 2 hours in the classroom and I came out with more questions than what I went in with. It's extremely hard to understand. If you think you can put this in a compartment and understand electricity in a couple of meetings, you're wrong. You've got to stay with this stuff every day. That's the way you learn it. You get involved with it, you get immersed with it. But I'm telling you, of the 35 communities, I don't think any of them are alike.
I'm really grateful that you said that, right? In it every day. This council, and this council historically, is primarily made up of civic-minded folks that are doing the best they can, right? An IOU is made up of a board of people that probably eat, sleep, and breathe electricity. When we talk about control, right, is it the case that we want to give control to a group of well-intentioned, extremely well-intentioned? That piece is critical. I am not saying that this board and this board in the past was not well-intentioned. It was. But well-intentioned, extremely underqualified people that are regulated by themselves. They have no outside power, no outside higher authority telling them what they can and cannot do with respect to what is fundamentally a monopolistic tax. Or do we think we should give control to an IOU, right, that is regulated by the PUC? And the hammer that is in Harrisburg, which one do you think makes more sense, right? If we're using electricity as a tax, that's the critical piece. If you're going to be a public power community, you should use it as public power. It should be cheaper. It should be 20 to 30% cheaper, not more expensive than your nearest neighbor.
Well, I can't debate this issue. I will tell you that, as I said at the beginning, there is not a month that goes by that I don't get a phone call from another borough or township in this state who is like, why can't we do what you do? We want to have electricity. We want our own system, and you can't do it now.
Miss-
And you know, Dairy Township, Hershey was the last ones, I think in the 70s they sold, and they regret it to this day.
Miss Bosak, those folks want what the other 32 have. They do not want a hidden tax, right?
Well, I'm not gonna, again, I can't debate that with you, because I don't know that they would see that the same way.
Yeah.
Of the 35, where does Mifflinburg rank in like smallest and largest, as far as how many meters and employees and things?
What are your meters?
There's about 2,000.
Oh, yeah, you're kind of in the sort of middle.
Oh, okay. I thought we'd be.
Yeah, we have, there are a fair number of communities that are under 2,000.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a wide variation.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You are more
Thank you.
welcome. And I will send the slides to you and you can check them out.
Any other visitors? Did you want to? They didn't add theirs.
Okay. Any other folks would like to speak?
Thank you, guys.
First up is discussion of the short-term rental ordinances. There were two that Noah presented at the regular council meeting. And so we were gonna review those and get anyone's thoughts on those. I think they were gonna be advertised not for this month, but
The following, once you folks have
Yeah.
approved a final version, yeah, there's been no approved final version. So if there's comments, I do not have a copy in front of me, which I regret right now. I don't know if that would be possible to fix quickly. Do you have one, Margaret? Thank you.
give me mine.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So there's two, one for zoning, the other one is to be inserted in chapter 13, the housing ordinance. Mr. Bowman's here, planning commission spent a lot of time reviewing these and working through them, and this, as I said last time, is the version that they approved to send to you.
Would anyone else like copies, if we're gonna discuss it? Maybe I can go make some copies for you.
That sounds great. Thank you, Margaret.
Let's start with chapter 29, the omnibus. Can you explain that? I think that's going to be easier.
Whatever
Bev,
order Bev wants
it's
to go in.
it's your choice.
Do you want? I mean, there is that other one that's number 2 on the agenda. That is just a number of items that Rob had identified to update. So if anybody has any questions about anything in there, let me know. I think that's pretty straightforward. I think they're all just
Yeah.
good housekeeping items that Rob had identified, and I'm
No
grateful to him.
Problems that we had with the
No, I'm going to
ordinance.
be a nerd on all these.
Okay.
Right? So we, unsurprisingly, right? This whereas clause here, we quote from the preamble. We talk about promoting general welfare.
Yep.
Can we add whilst maintaining?
Lance, take your hand away from your face.
Can we add whilst maintaining the blessing of liberty?
If you so insist.
Does it have to be this text?
No, it's just the generic text I use every time.
Can we change the generic text?
You can certainly change the generic
With
text.
council's grace, I guess.
Sure.
What are we changing? I didn't hear it.
Use a microphone, please.
Yeah,
I didn't hear it.
I'm saying that if we're going to write a bunch of laws, and all these laws, and the template for all these laws talks about promoting the general welfare, which is quoting from the preamble of the Constitution, we shouldn't leave out the blessings of liberty that comes after that.
so the quote in the whereas clauses at the front of those is actually
Yes.
is a quote really from the borough code, when they authorize and provide authority to the borough to pass ordinances, which is what those sections cite to. So, I mean, sure, you can add whatever you want in the whereas clause. The whereas clauses are essentially intended to show legislative intent. That's their purpose. And they're not what actually goes in the ordinance itself. So, whatever the group would like to do, if you want to change the whereas clauses, I'm happy to do that. Anything else on the omnibus?
Does anyone care whether we include that or not? Do folks know why I want to add that? Did we think I'm just being picky?
Speak.
Okay, so we make a ton of laws that talk about we're going to talk about it tonight, right? We make a ton of laws and rules, whatever. I don't actually get the difference yet, but maybe I'll find out someday. And we talk about public safety, promoting general welfare, but nowhere do I see anything about maintaining the balance with like liberty. That's why it bothers me. That's why I think we should change it.
I don't think it changes the force and effect of the ordinance, so I think it's fine. It's fine with me to change, if folks would like me to do that.
I don't care anymore. One's referencing our borough code and one's referencing the Constitution.
Okay. I'll make that change.
You want to take a straw poll on that, or?
If you'd like.
Is anyone against liberty as a general idea? Think we should
All
promote?
liberty or just lady liberty?
I'm serious. Do we think we should promote what we perceive as general welfare at the expense of liberty?
I'm fine with it.
That tracks.
Yes.
I just wanted you to get past
Thanks, Mark.
Are you implying that some of our ordinances contradict people's, the citizens' liberty?
Yes.
You have
Lots of them.
You have one, Lance? You have
Yeah,
one?
I have one.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think it's important, if we're going to be legislating, that we remember there's to be a balance.
So Margaret's missed what you brought up, I think, Lance.
Noah's going to... this is purely like an administrative thing, but it's going to be important. Like, we're going to talk about serious stuff in this room. And like, if we only talk about public safety and general welfare, what we perceive as general welfare, and we never talk about like restricting freedoms in order to achieve that, that is deeply problematic. And the balance will be completely off. That's why I'm making us think about this.
Is it just from here on out, or do we have to go back and change all of them?
No, you wouldn't have to do that.
No, it's not in the actual.
They don't go in the
It's-
actual ordinances. Like I said, the whereas clauses are, you're showing the legislative intent of the body. And so they're generally, they can be generic, they can be specific. It depends on what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it. You're describing the purpose. And this is really just boilerplate generic language that is inserted in our template ordinances that we put together. So.
Anybody against? Is anybody against adding that?
Who wants to change to them? Is that
That's what I'm asking. Is anybody against? What? You're not against it, you're for it, you don't really
It
care.
doesn't make any difference to me.
That's, okay. I guess I have.
Okay.
Noah, can you explain how this conditional use, or is this going to, basically are you saying they become a conditional use or a special exception when they're not included here? Like I'm confused by the actual body
We only
of
go
what's going on.
4 or 05.
Where are you in?
The actual meat of what we're talking about. Like what happens in this ordinance if a use is not named? Does it go to a special exception or a conditional use?
A conditional use.
Okay, and what are the conditions if it isn't named
So
in the
a conditional use is a permitted use in a particular zoning district that goes before this body as the borough council for a conditional use hearing, and this body may then, based on the testimony presented at the hearing, attach conditions to the use. The important thing to know about a conditional use is that, as I said previously, it is permitted, meaning you're saying this use is allowed in this particular district, but we as the body are able to impose conditions subject to law that are reasonable in order to conform that use to the zoning district in which it's in. And it has to be predicated on the testimony presented at the conditional use hearing. So oftentimes what will happen is if there's a conditional use hearing, they'll hire an attorney, the attorney will come to the meeting, they will present testimony and evidence, there'll be a stenographer present, just like with a zoning hearing board hearing, it's a quasi-judicial function of the borough council. And in so doing, they will, based on the testimony presented, apply those conditions. I've been involved in litigation regarding conditional use issues where testimony was not presented that supported the underlying conditions that were applied by the borough, in this case it was a township, and then later those things were challenged because there wasn't predicated and there was no foundation laid by the testimony at the hearing. That testimony doesn't just need to be from the applicant. The testimony can also be provided by the governing body. It can also be presented by other adjoining citizens and others. So those are the kinds of things that you need to consider. The other option is a special exception. A special exception means that it's not necessarily a permitted use, but it is allowed subject to certain conditions that are already laid out in the existing zoning ordinance. So the imposition of the conditions is different. With a special exception, the conditions are done by ordinance and law, and they're findable on the face of the law, the governing law within the area. And in the conditional use, you apply the conditions ex post facto.
Okay, so we get to make up the conditions. Being glib with the language, we make up the conditions. And
Pursuant to the testimony
have
presented.
Have to be reasonable, lest we get sued for making up on.
Correct, and there's a significant body of case law regarding this.
How the conditions work.
How conditions can be applied, what kind of conditions are considered reasonable, that sort of thing.
Think of it, I was gonna say, think of it as we had a Chick-fil-A come in and you didn't have a right zoning district that would allow them to be permissible. This would fall under that if that would be the case, and then you could have them require them to do a traffic impact study as to how that would impact traffic, or a Dunkin' Donuts, or there's other things that come up. You cannot, as we talked about before, spot zone or restrict anything. So the controversial things which are out there now, things like the data centers we all hear about, gentlemen's clubs, bars, that kind of thing. You can't not allow those things, but if they come in, then you can make it a little bit more restrictive. If they're going to be in, they have to meet these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And the conditions have to be consistent with the zoning district, like the character of the standards of the zoning district. Is that the gist of it?
That's the case for special exceptions in particular. That's language you'll find in special exception. That's zoning hearing board material, though, so that would not have come before this body. If it was a conditional use, it's predicated on the testimony presented at the hearing specifically.
And what's the permanency of each of those, or is it not the permanency of each of those, or is it not sticky at all?
What do you mean by permanency?
So does that change anything in terms of, there was a Chick-fil-A there before, now I'm an open restaurant? Or does that go away when the Chick-fil-A goes away?
So you're talking about like grandfathering in, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
So with a condition, so that wouldn't necessarily, I don't know how that would necessarily apply here to this section. That does apply to zoning generally, but that wouldn't apply to this particular provision. The purpose of this section that Rob and I put before you is you want to have, it's essentially a catch-all provision. So this all kind of started when the data center conversation started and other things like that. This isn't answering your question, Dave. I recognize that, but I'll see if I get to an answer as I ramble on here.
That's my style.
That's all right. But the idea is you don't want to be left in a situation where because you haven't zoned for a particular use, it's a use not provided for, and therefore there's no process laid out.
Because if somebody comes in and they, Chick-fil-A wants to come down, or again, data center, gentlemen's club, you're going to have to allow them, and there's no restrictions. So at least with this on the books, you have something to stand behind to make sure you're protecting the community and the surrounding properties that if there is an issue. For example, like gentlemen's club, you may want screens. You may not want bright flashing lights out in front of it, that kind of thing. Or like I said, it's Chick-fil-A, you might want a traffic impact study, you may want some other studies. If it's something may affect the environment, there may be some things you want to have them done in the way of studies regarding environmental impact studies. So there are all the kinds of things that kind of protect you, at least you have some leg to stand on, where right now you really don't.
Yeah, like I said, with a special exception, you're providing them the criteria for approval up front. Whereas with conditional use, you're not able to tell them no, because it's permitted. It is a permitted use, but you are able to say, here's the requirements that are going to go on to this as you move forward. The conversation with the Planning Commission was that they thought that this body would be more suited to handling those types of situations and analyzing them as the final arbiter of things like the zoning ordinance and the saldo and all those governing documents. The view was that this body would be the more appropriate body to handle those catch-all items. Other than the zoning hearing board, because they would handle any special exception. Any other questions about that portion?
Is how most of your other
On those.
municipal clients do this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
The example actually we looked at, Lance, in the planning commission was actually from Gregg Township in Meeting County.
Yep, and we also looked at another one from Lidditz Borough.
Yeah.
There were a couple of others that I found when doing research as well. It's fairly common to have a catch-all provision like this. So, Mr. Bowman? Mr. Bowman.
No, absolutely.
The other item in relation to having you folks involved is that you people answer to the public. The zoning hearing board does not do that. So the electorate, we felt, needed to be involved indirectly and perhaps in the long run directly by whatever decisions you folks end up making.
My only caution regarding conditional use is that we do not want to impose conditions that make a project impossible, that make it, an otherwise a permitted use or a conditional use impossible to put in, or, you impose a condition that says that they have to do some very expensive thing in order to, that therefore makes that project unattainable, essentially stopping it by function of the condition you imposed. That's how you get sued. So. That being said, I have great faith in this group, so no worries from me.
Anything else?
How much does it cost?
What?
The conditional use hearings, how much do they cost? Is it like $1,000 to get scheduled? Like, do we charge a fee?
Right now, there's no fee, you'd have to establish one.
But they have to pay for the stenographer. The applicant pays for the stenographer.
It's generally, Lance, they're the same fee as it was be for the
Zoning hearing board? Okay,
generally.
all right. Okay, this makes sense, thank you.
Which, I mean, theoretically, you could apply for a conditional use and not have a stenographer, but then, when the borough imposes a bunch of conditions you don't like and you decide to take them to court over it, you have no record below, and then the borough also would be at risk because you don't have a record to support things. So, it's good to have somebody recording what's going on. Anything else in that, what I was terming the omnibus zoning ordinance update? Cool. why don't we stick, well, would you folks rather stick with zoning and talk about the zoning changes for short-term rentals, or go straight to the short-term rental housing ordinance itself? Oh,
Surprises, go ahead.
okay. Oh, well, let's go to this zoning ordinance itself, because I think that would make more sense. So that's going to be 05. Would you like me to explain briefly what's kind of going on here? I can do that. Okay, so in this first section, 13102, purpose and findings, the existing purpose statements in the housing ordinance would remain the same. They're not depicted here, but they are referenced and incorporated by that reference. And we would add this additional purpose statement. Again, purpose statements show like legislative intent. These things are really become important if ever there's a legal challenge to an ordinance. And then 103. So there's now would be 2 articles in the housing ordinance: Article 1, Article 2. This is also Article 1, adding additional definitions in alphabetical order to the ordinance.
Do you want proposed edits as we go?
Yes, I do. So why don't we just start on this first page and
13102, section 2, I would like to strike.
102, section 2.
To 13102 2. I would like to strike that entire thing.
Oh, in there. Okay.
Yep.
Where do you
It's not in front of us. It's in the actual. May I see your thing, Lance?
Yep.
That's something that is supposed to be.
So that's not depicted because it's. Yep.
It's part of the original housing ordinance, which
What was it?
codifies the socioeconomic prejudice and discrimination of this entire ordinance.
Would you like me to read it to you? In recent years, many formerly private homes have been turned into residential rental units. Those rental units have oftentimes been rented to individuals who, because they have no ownership interest in the property, have allowed the properties to deteriorate. In many cases, the owners of the properties live long distances from the borough of Mifflinburg. As a result, property maintenance of many rental units in the borough of Mifflinburg has been somewhat lax. In addition, problems have occurred because many tenants, because they have no ownership interest in the real estate, have not been concerned about following the codes of the borough of Mifflinburg, including codes which govern maintenance and safety of the property. This, in turn, has caused problems for other homeowners near the rental units. In addition, there is a greater incidence of violation of various codes of the borough of Mifflinburg and residential rental properties where owners rent properties to tenants.
I would be comfortable getting rid of that very last part, but everything else is, and I'm not saying because it's not factual, but everything else, in my opinion, is factual.
So you want to strike the last one?
Just that last little bit.
This, in turn, has caused problems for other homeowners near the rent. In addition, there's a greater incidence of violations of various codes of the borough of Mifflinburg in residential rental properties where owners rent properties to tenants. That portion?
Yeah,
You don't think that's true?
I think it is true.
Then why would we strike it? But not strike the rest.
I don't have data to give you right now to tell you that.
It would change from time to time, so,
That's true, yeah.
in general, it's probably true.
I would say.
I'm comfortable leaving it.
So if you took it out, Lance, what would happen?
Nothing. Literally nothing would happen. This is just the explanation of why y'all did this in 2015. And I think it's ridiculous.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, I'd say leave it in there. Chief Fetterman says we do have more problems with rental properties, so I'm comfortable leaving it in.
I can attest to the fact that in my neighborhood, there is a rental property where the owner of the property has not been responsible to make sure that the property is well taken care of. It's not a reflection upon the tenants, but it's a reflection upon the owner of the property who doesn't live there. And there are other examples in the borough where absentee owners do not take care of the properties the way they should be taken care of. And the neighbors, me being one of them, has to put up with the crap that goes on next door. So I'm not in favor of removing that.
I would say probably 90% of the small code stuff that we don't give to Jim, weeds, grass, abandoned vehicles, a lot of that stuff ends up chasing tails to figure out who owns the property, because it's not the person who's living there. To send out notices to see that grass gets cut and garbage gets taken away.
Well, and I would think, like, your different leases for different properties, some is, like, the person that lives there has to do it, and some would be, you know, the owner hires somebody if they're not around.
Right, we don't get into it with the landlord, but, and there's ones where we call the landlord and say, hey, you know, your grass is like, it's starting to look like a jungle. Well, the person living there's supposed to be mowing it, I'll get someone up to take care of it.
But I would think it's ultimately, and not to argue with you, but I would think that, in my opinion, it would ultimately be the responsibility of the property owner to make sure that the property is being taken care of.
Right, and that's who we track down now.
Sure, right,
Yeah.
okay.
That's not the issue. The issue is that our local government is codifying causality based on our community narrative, not based on what we're trying to actually regulate. If we go to the ordinance that CK-COG has, I highly doubt that there is this piece of purpose and intent. We do not need a paragraph that says people behave badly because they're renters in our ordinance in order to achieve the goals we have with respect to safety, order, welfare, whatever language you want to choose, right? It's the causality that is the problem, right? If you treat people the way you perceive them to be treated and make extra rules for them or laws for them because of this, what is fundamentally a socioeconomic status, you will perpetuate the same cycle. That's why I'm against it. You don't need to say it. There is nothing that says a renter is not going to take care of their property because they're a renter. That's what we're saying here. There is nothing that says a landlord is not going to take care of their property because they don't personally live there. That is what we're saying as a government. We should not say that. That's what I think.
Sometimes the truth is not pleasant. Those are facts, and I'm fine with them being in there.
It's part of the purpose. I mean, purpose of the ordinance is purpose of all these various rules and regulations and requirements. It's part of the purpose.
Liz, can I
In
see
the
your
back of
copy
your
of the
mind,
original one? Yeah, pass it.
these
Can I
properties
check
are
first? Sorry.
Yeah.
not made-
I don't know if
I guess
there's
my only question is, does the purpose need to be in there?
I just want to read your statement.
Yeah, I just don't know if I have
Is
it.
the purpose of every ordinance
The like
spelled
I
out like that? I mean.
there is a purpose statement in most of the chapters within the ordinance. However,
Has
as
it
we
spelled out like that,
what
to that specific?
you don't know, you do not need to.
Right.
It's a purpose statement. It's not actually law. It's almost dicta. I don't know if you so like, you know, in a Supreme Court opinion, they write a whole bunch of stuff, but only part of it actually does anything, right? That's all called dicta. So that it's almost, you know, but like I said, it's what it does do, and the times that it is looked at is if there are challenges that go through a court process, and then the courts will look at those sorts of things and say, you know, what was the legislative intent of the body in putting this together? And one of the key places they'll look to is purpose statements, minutes of the borough council, and that sort of thing. So
No, I agree there should be a purpose. I guess I'm tracking sort of what Lance is saying, like, we have a curfew ordinance, but in there it doesn't say we have that curfew ordinance because there's a bunch of hellions that run around, you know.
right,
I think
I would
The
agree.
wording, I think, could be different.
I think with the statement, purpose statement 1, and purpose statement 3. Purpose statement 1 speaks to the public safety nature of why we have to have this ordinance. I think I'm in line with Lance's to strike 2. I just think it's unnecessary and it doesn't add specific purpose to it. 1 specifically touches on the public safety needs of why we need the ordinance, and 3 touches on the
Thanks for bringing copies.
the ever-growing aspect of short-term rentals, kind of governing why we need this ordinance. I just think 2 would be, in essence, filler that doesn't need to be there.
I was thinking of it as fluff.
Political speech is what it is.
So what's my direction on that?
I was gonna ask a question, maybe I'll direct it to Bev since she's council president. You know, what you've been given tonight as far as, I'll say, the rewrite of an additional section in chapter 13, and I know, and I'll point out Lance, and I know he's got issues with chapter 13 as to what was there before. I'm not trying to, I guess, call him out, but
That's the truth.
what you had before you tonight was what you had asked the planning commission to do is come up with regulations regarding short-term rentals. And this was what they come up with as to what they thought the best places for it to fit, both with parts that they had right in the zoning ordinance and revised, as well as parts they revised to chapter 13, as they thought the best home for it. I didn't know we were gonna get into a whole other conversation as to the long-term rental side of it, and I don't know you're gonna have tonight to talk about all that, because we had other things to talk about.
We will not. And what I will tell you is in 13206.
Could you let me finish my point?
Sure.
And all I was gonna say is, maybe what you do to get through tonight is, do you have issues with anything regarding short-term rental? And then come back if there is issues you wanna discuss later about the LTR side of it.
Well, that's in the short-term rental. That verbiage is in the short-term rental.
No, it's in the housing ordinance.
It's in this ordinance that I'm looking at right here.
You have the short-term rental, which is the whole section 100 section that he wrote.
So what you're seeing in the drafts that are in front of you is an addition to section 13-102, purpose and findings, that would add paragraph 3 and subparagraph 1 to what the existing housing ordinance. Then, as I described, there are definitions that are added. All other definitions within the housing ordinance are proposed to remain the same because they do not relate directly to short-term rentals. You then have definitions for short-term rentals, and then if you flip to the second page, third page really, third page, you are now looking at 13201. This is where we start a new article under the a new part under the ordinance. And then there's general regulations that were drafted. You've got 202, short-term rental occupancy regulations, 203, minimum safety regulations, prohibited activities in 204, and then 205 is enforcement. So it's not lengthy. Those items are all, but that's how that's divided up, and the reason that's done that way is because it is all under one overall chapter, but then there are 2 separate sections, and we'd be adding a new section. A new part, excuse me.
All right, so we're gonna discuss the nuts and bolts of this, the specifics, stuff, the game plan tonight?
What I'm looking for from you folks ultimately is edits to the short-term rental regulations that are, or ordinance that I put together with the help of the Planning Commission, as we kind of move towards whatever the eventual end is, which I would assume is advertisement and an ordinance hearing and a vote.
So then on page 3, short-term rental hosted, which is rented in the same entity for less than 30 consecutive days. In my opinion, that is high. I think 2 weeks is plenty. The people that are using these short-term rentals are coming to town for a Bucknell graduation or swimming championships or whatever. I think 30 days is too much. I would bump that to 15.
This is a public comment.
2 weeks and. I'm not okay.
Are you good, Dave?
What?
Are you, Jim has a question, I didn't wanna
Oh,
cut
I'm
you.
sorry.
I know, I didn't wanna cut you off if you weren't done.
No, I was trying to get my pen to.
Okay.
keep getting my
No,
phone.
just so you know, every short-term ordinance and short-term definition is the ordinance, or the definition of that is from 1 to 29 days. That's why that was here.
And that was consistent with the example that the CK cog had provided us when we were drafting this, which is why that we're taking from others.
And just out of curiosity, David, I remember places I worked before where we used to rent places that would go, because we had guys working out of town.
Oh, I see, yes.
So we had like surveyors that would go stay at, we were doing beach surveys down
Right.
in Hampton, New Jersey, I think it was. And they would stay in the beach house that we rent 30 days at a time. Or you might get some gas workers or, other things. I'm just saying, I'm using that as an example. If you would say 2 weeks, then you're gonna limit that kind of opportunity. Not that I care either way, because I don't have an STR, but I'm just saying.
Do we have, do we have that sort of thing going on in here, in town or not? Wayne?
What?
Your short-term rental, do you have people coming in and staying for more than 2 weeks?
I don't know.
What?
I don't think it's. I said I don't know, and I don't think it's consistent with minimum measures for keeping transient visitors and residents in Mifflinburg Borough safe. I don't think we need that. I don't think we need a 15-day instead of 29. If everyone else is doing 29, I don't think we're special.
That's why I just come to mind when I think of what you said that. I understand what you're getting at with long-term rental.
I'll say this. I'll save everyone a lot of time. There is almost no way I'm going to vote for this. And that might make it easier for folks to move forward if you just count it as we're looking for other votes to pass this 5-1, because, okay, when we do this, we're affirming the remainder of Chapter 13. And Chapter 13, in my view, this is not a surprise. I have major issues with that. So if we're going to do this short-term rental ordinance, I'm willing to do the work, right, to help council cut this down. There's a ton of stuff in here that's redundant, unnecessary, whatever, in my view. But there's no way I'm voting for this unless we go to Chapter 13 and we fix the whole thing from scratch. And I'm willing to do that work too, but that is a lot of work, right? So that might make it easier in terms of, Bev, your ability to manage time, because like if we run these meetings on this the way we do everything else, it's going to be painful for everybody. This all needs line by line attention. Like, it's really bad in my view. So like, this is a spot where, like, being the one of the 6, I just am supposed to lose unless other people agree that this needs attention.
So we're gonna pick this apart tonight, or we're not gonna pick it? I mean, if we certainly don't pick it apart, I don't think it should be voted on next month.
He's the Dave went through his list of his recommendations.
Yeah, all right. Is that all right, Madam President? All right, point number 3 on the same page. Except for downtown, all short-term rentals shall have one off-street parking space for each unit, except for downtown district, where on-street parking is sufficient. That is incorrect.
I agree.
Downtown parking is at a premium. That should be stricken.
I want to get this in. I agree with Dave. That was a mistake. That doesn't make sense. Yes.
I think the thought process for everyone is, correct me if I'm wrong, is probably going to be impossible for them to provide an extra parking space. So it would make STRs are almost impossible.
I can't build the unit unless I have the spaces, right? Dave's right on that one. I was going to let it go, but he's right.
Maybe the wording shouldn't be that it's sufficient, but it's just leave it, except downtown district, period.
Well, no, I think they should have, I think they should be made to have
Have it.
space,
Have one
absolutely.
space.
It should be the same as a dwelling, right? It should be the same as a dwelling, or at least the motel. The parking doesn't make any sense either, right? We have STRs with 1, we have motels with 1 1/4, and we have dwellings with 2. That doesn't make any sense either.
Okay, so that was my comment on that. Length of stay, I'm on the next page now. I had a question on that, length of stay. Can stays be renewed forever?
Where are you at, Dave?
13-202.
Thank you.
And that's not something that, now I'm looking at this, it does not address length of stay.
No, it does not.
So, is it really a short-term rental if I have a 30-day stay and have another 30-day stay and another 30-day stay and so forth and so on? So should length of stay, I mean, it says in the other part, I wonder if that's renewable. Can you just keep, if that's the case, now you're in an apartment or a
You move
rental.
out one day and back in or whatever.
Yeah.
Do we have to put language of non-consecutive something or other? So that you cannot just move out one day, move back in for another 30 days?
Maybe if you go home for the weekend.
You can.
All right.
I don't know.
Right. Forging ahead to 13-204. That's the next page. Number 1, under 13-204, no commercial uses. Commercial uses are strictly prohibited. Is this not in and of itself a commercial use?
That's a policy decision.
If you're in the rental business, it's a commercial use.
For the definition in your zoning ordinance now.
Yeah, right. I mean,
So you're talking business pursuits.
it's not a commercial use to give somebody a long-term rental for a year. You know, you sign a lease for a year. It's still a residential use. I mean, I see what you're
I
saying.
don't know, Jimmy makes me get a license.
Right, but I think you're talking about somebody moving in there and start manufacturing something.
Right.
A business in the storefront.
Something out of it,
Right,
Do you want
right.
that language just rewritten so it's clearer?
No, that was just my question. It just seemed like it was contradicting itself, in my opinion.
I'll bite. Why is that a problem? Someone takes a short-term rental and then they start doing stuff. They're set up their office there, right? And they're taking meetings during the day. Why is that a problem?
I guess it would depend on the commercial use you're doing.
And where it is,
Could
now,
be.
now you have people coming and parking.
Yeah.
Do you have ample parking for them? Are they taking up spaces that could be used by consumers coming to the downtown?
Are they using hazardous materials?
So
That's what they're doing.
I'm thinking about, this is not an opinion, I'm just thinking about how it all functions together. And the good thing to remember as you go through this is that we're also going to look at in just a moment a zoning ordinance that makes short-term rentals permitted uses and conditional uses in various zoning districts within the borough. And it refers to, it adds the definitions of short-term rentals. These things are really in conjunction, and so we're taking them piecemeal, but they're in conjunction. And so because it's defined, if you had a permitted use for a short-term rental in a particular zoning district, then theoretically, I guess you could say that it's a commercial use could go in there. But again, that doesn't fall under the definition of short-term rental. So it could be seen as duplicative. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, and
You have to think about kind of both of them together.
And with regard to commercial endeavors inside of short-term rental, Lance's example is probably the most peaceful, gentle thing you could do. You know, it's an office, I have a computer, and I take meetings. But if you allow that, how are you not to allow them? Oh, well, also now I'm making soap, and also I'm, you know what I mean?
Well, if you're making soap and it's in a residential district where you're not allowed to make soap, I think Garrett can probably resolve that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in an office, in a space, this is what Noah just explained, so I'm not going to repeat it.
you're fine.
But if you're doing a thing that's already allowed in the place you're doing the thing, I don't see what the issue is. So I think it's
But
redundant,
if you're
is
going
my
to do
point.
that thing in a district where they allow that thing, you need to be approved to do that thing.
That's right, and we already have a process for that. So if the soap making is happening, if we got Fight Club going on up on Walnut Street, right, then we have a way that Garrett can go after Tyler Durden for making soap in the basement. Right? We don't need our short-term rental to say no commercial uses because we're already
The
covered.
problem with that is that is a lengthy process. They're gonna send a letter.
So it's going to be
give
fast.
them 10 days to
Dave.
stop doing that. And then-
That makes no sense, Dave. Is the short-term rental process going to be faster than the existing zoning process? It's going to be the same process. Walk me through how that one makes sense. How is it going to be faster? Are we going to
It's
have?
coming through the cog, yes, I guess it would be.
It's the
because
same.
You need to mail a letter and then.
It's the same.
have them
It's
do it
redundant.
themselves.
Would you prefer this language to say that the use must marry up with the
Don't need to say that.
district?
No, 'cause that's almost encouraging someone to say, no.
Commercial uses permitted in commercial districts, but it's not gonna be permitted in the residential districts.
I don't think that's as
Well,
practical.
I'm going to make it easy for you. I don't think you need any of these. They're all redundant. With the exception number 5, if you want to make a policy choice. But I think all the other ones are completely redundant. I really do. By the time you've gotten to a place where there's harm, I don't think you need to even mention it in the short-term rental because I think Jim has another way to go after it. I really do.
And the point of a lot of these things was to make it in a one spot, so if someone wants to own a short-term rental or start one, all of the information is kind of contained in this, as best that we could, in this one area. So they didn't have to go over here, oh, what does your nuisance ordinance say? What does this thing say over here? It's contained in this area. That's what we tried to make it as easy as possible on the person who's trying to develop the short-term rental. That's why some of that language is in here.
If you wanted to make it as easy as possible, we should have never done this a year ago, right? It didn't have to be done. That would have been the easiest version. Someone who wants to be a bad actor, Trace said it best in March, one of the first meetings he was here. Rule breakers are not going to go to the borough ordinance site and say, what are the rules for the short-term rental? They're going to convert their garage without a permit, without an EDU, and do what they want. And then after the fact, it's going to be chaos for Jim and everybody else. No version of us passing a bunch of words and spending a bunch of time is going to change the fact that people that don't care and aren't going to follow the rules on short-term rentals are going to do it anyway. This was a total waste of time. Time was what this was a waste of. More so than Noah's money, right? But I mean, we learned something from it, but we're not going to have accomplished anything as far as I'm concerned with this. I agree. A lot of what we do, we don't accomplish much.
For anything. For those who want to follow the rules correctly, this is what you do.
All right.
No, Don has a question.
Oh, sorry.
What we envisioned at the beginning and carried through to the end, which is obviously not the end, is that when an entity, an individual came in to apply for a short-term rental, that all that information that they needed was in a singular packet, that they didn't have to refer to this ordinance and whatever in order to understand what they had to go through and what they had to follow. That was the design. If you folks don't want the design,
No, I like this.
that is certainly, as the people of final approval, your option.
Do you know what the old version was? For the rule follower, I followed the rules when I did this. I picked up the phone, I called the COG, I talked to Mackenzie. She said, put it in the regular rental piece. It gets inspected every year. It wasn't a problem. That was what the rule followers did. There's no version. It is fantasy land, Mr. Bowman, to think that a rule breaker is going to come into the borough office and ask for a packet and maintain a registry.
They're coming to the borough office.
They're never going to show up. They're never going to be in this building. They're just going to do what they want. They're never going to be here. The register, there's so much in there that is totally bonkers. It's just never going to happen.
Well, that is certainly a part of the liberty that you're talking about, and I understand your desire for it, but at the same time, when you get into a situation where people are not abiding by the laws, then we, meaning the planning commission, and then in turn you folks, if you don't have it all spelled out so that people understand it from the get-go. When it goes to a Jeff Mensch or someone in his position to arbitrate the whole thing, you know, they're gonna say, oh, I didn't know that. Well, you know, you need to make sure that people know. If they don't wanna know, that's their decision, but at least they're given that option.
True. All right, number 5, I had a comment here that didn't make a lot of sense now that I read back over it.
We're still in 204.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. 13-204, number 5. at the
Thank you.
bottom. Portable or temporary shelters, no tents, travel trailers, recreational vehicles, similar portable or temporary shelters, including trailered boats, may be used as a short-term rental. I don't know why I had a question. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, you shouldn't be doing those things. But
Some places do allow those.
Why do we care? If someone has an RV and wants to use that as a short-term rental, why do we care? If someone wants to have a tent in their backyard and charge somebody $10, why do we care? Why should we not allow that?
From a sewer standpoint, you don't allow RVs or trailers to be hooked
able
up.
to dump that waste, and we currently have a problem with.
That's an ordinance thing in the sewer.
Okay, so should we regulate how many kids people have? If I have a household, should you only be able to have 6 kids, 5 kids? Well, it's a bad argument, Dave. The whole thing, like, you're making bad rules or bad laws. Whichever one you want to pick, it's bad. It makes no sense. It's not consistent with what we're actually trying to do. If someone's loud in their tent party, Trace already has a way to help there, right? If someone's doing whatever, we already have a rule set for that. You don't need to regulate all these individual things people could do. That's the piece that matters. People could do it, okay, in a way that's compliant with what we want. But you're not letting them because you're worried about the boogeyman in the tents having Woodstock on Green Street. Like, you don't do that. That's it.
You also want to conform to the environment around you. There are neighbors and businesses and residences around wherever this is going to be, so those neighbors aren't going to want RVs and tents and, you know, you just establish some basic rules about the STR, and that's what this is meant to do, so that you are kind of maintaining the character of that environment around them. It's meant to kind of blend in like it's just another rental unit. It's not.
I would agree with that. It would
So,
certainly impact the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's.
How?
All right. Turn the page, I think, to 13-205.
Same page.
Number 2, short-term rental operators shall be prohibited. This is where if you have 3 or more violations within a 12-month period, then you are not allowed to offer a specific property for 12 months. I'm sorry. No, it looks like you're shut off completely. A short-term rental operator shall be prohibited from offering a specific property for short-term rental in the borough upon violations of 3 or more within 12 months. So, in other words, if you're doing things you're not supposed to do and you get 3 strikes within 12 months, then you are not permitted to rent that specific property. So, is everyone comfortable with that, or would you rather have it say any property? Because that is sometimes the threat you hear, if you don't keep your rentals nice, we're going to take your rental license and you won't rent any of your properties. Is that correct?
I think you have to do what you're talking about, Dave, you have to have is it 95 or?
Can you give me a little more context?
It's the act where, it's the state of Pennsylvania, where you have to, if you get in trouble, or you have a violation of one property, you can't get a building permit, you can't get a rental permit for another.
I don't know specifically what you're referring to,
Right.
but I believe you.
Yeah. So I don't know if that would be allowed in this situation or not. But the way it's written, basically, if there was a violation, 3 violations in 12 months, we would just simply revoke their license.
For that specific
For that
property.
spot. wanna rent.
Because
In your opinion, if someone was in that situation, wouldn't you think, oh, they're probably not gonna act properly on their other properties? Or they just say, okay, well, I'll just establish one over there, and
Are we talking, you know, is it the owner issue or is it a tenant issue?
the owner,
Well, sure.
yeah.
The owner is violating, the ordinance at one location, he's probably doing it at other.
Right, okay, so I'll stick to that. So I would say any property, if that's allowed. And then, how would you feel about bumping it up to 24 months? 3 strikes in 24 months instead of just 12?
Doesn't matter to us.
All right? You gotta keep your act clean for 2 years instead of just 1.
Hold on a second. Does anyone have an issue with that? We just doubled it, just on the whim.
I'll be honest, I'm sitting back here just listening to this, and now we're gonna shut down anyone because we have one property. Now we're just gonna say you're done for good across all your properties. Like, leave a shred of like, get a little out of hand here, folks.
the intent with
I know what the
the,
intent is, Linda.
I
I'm
think-
saying we're getting a little aggressive.
I think the intent
By
was
and
with
large.
that specific, when we said to revoke it for that specific rental property, we knew that there could be an owner that had different properties in different districts, and there might be different kind of requirements for different districts. Some of them are conditional uses and some of them are permitted. So there might be a property that is more problematic. So we didn't, when we wrote that, we didn't want to take away some property owner's right to have STRs in any area of the borough. But if there was one property that consistently was an issue, we were gonna take away the right for them to have a rental property at that particular site.
That makes
We don't have to
sense.
worry about
That's-
STRs because I don't think they're gonna have. This seems like a very. It's certainly not a pro-renter ordinance, or landlord ordinance in that respect.
We're certainly not the only borough that is looking to enact an ordinance like this.
I'm very aware of that, thank you. I'm just saying, it's nice when you just went from 12 months to 24 and no one said, questioned it or anything.
Okay,
Madam President, can the mayor continue?
Yeah.
I will not, because I'm finished.
Can I make a few comments real quick? I know it's been going on for a long time. When I read this ordinance, I just picked out a couple things, so real quick. I like the definitions that you put in the short-term rental hosted, short-term rental unhosted. I think I explained very well what you're doing there. But short-term rental hosted in my world code world, let's call it transient, a tourist home, I'm sorry. And short-term rental unhosted, that is, in my world, it's called a transient rental. Do what you want with it.
Parentheses.
Yep, parentheses would be great. I think it just keeps things.
Can you repeat what you said the hosted one was first?
Short-term rental hosted is a tourist home.
Okay, thank you.
Short-term rental unhosted is a transient rental.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
The next section I have here is 13-203, section 2, where you're talking about CO detectors and smoke alarms. Great, I love it. Unfortunately, though, your current property maintenance code, which is a 2015 version, does not require carbon monoxide detectors. So you probably want to think about that.
And I think Rebecca pointed that out, and they decided to keep it in, they thought it was important enough to have it in the STR.
So you can, technically,
According to this, then you won't need them, because it says in conformance with the provisions of the Uniform Construction Code.
Didn't we update to be the most current?
no. You're still using 2015.
That was when I was on council.
Yeah.
Around. Like, this can has been kicked down the street so many times that there's no can left to kick, frankly.
There's a lot of dead horses that are beat into the ground too.
Yeah, they didn't require CO detectors until 2021 version, which I think blew my mind. But anyway, so just so you know that. And then the last thing I had was fire extinguishers.
Mhm.
A lot of rental ordinances years ago called out fire extinguishers in residential rental units. Over the years, they have gotten away from it. Reason being is because people are not trained in using fire extinguishers, probably especially in short-term rentals, where you use a fire extinguisher, use it improperly, you can cause a larger fire. You can get injured. A lot of fire extinguishers in rental units become toys. They play with them, they don't get serviced like they should be. They become door stops. They get taken off the hooks and get put underneath the counters. So I think it's just, I mean, you can keep it, I'm all for fire extinguishers, but I just want to let you know that's going to be an issue.
One of those damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's something that, again, they had conversation with Rebecca, as you know, and
Yep, absolutely.
that's what they decided to do, because I think it requires more, I don't have a copy of the ordinance.
Right.
I think it requires more.
Typically fire extinguishers, they're not, you don't have to have them in residential, anything. They're only required in commercial. Because I think they look at it and say, well, people who work in factories or places of business, they get trained in how to use a fire extinguisher. That is all I have.
The only thing I'll mention, if we make any of those definition changes that he's suggesting, to make sure they get.
Yeah, they have to collate with the other. Yep.
Yeah.
Like I said, I liked it because it's tourist home. What the heck is that?
You're right. It's a little clearer as to what it actually, yeah.
Yep, so I like the word that goes with it, but I just want to let you know that's the proper definition and the word that goes with it.
Credit goes to the planning.
So it's just me and Dave that have any edits to this or concerns. No one else has any thoughts?
I created it.
Sure.
The planning commission.
Sure. So Linda was part of. That's fair, Linda.
Because we started with a CK Cog version of
Uh-huh.
it, which was much longer, and then we had another example. We looked at several different examples.
There are a couple.
3 or 4. that we
Rob
looked-
came across this one, I think it was you or Noah, and this one was really simple.
Yeah.
And we're like, this one matches more of what we think we want versus all of these other, it was pages and pages and pages.
They're long
of
ones,
stuff That, yeah, we're like, oh, this is way more complicated than what we need for Mifflinburg.
Yeah.
And this seemed to capture the essence of what we were after
Yeah.
in a way
Just-
that we thought, this makes sense for us, so this
Yeah.
is, and then we tweaked that from there. And I was adamant about the safety paragraphs, because I'm all about safety.
Yeah. This calls for a 4-year registry. Everyone saw that? Is cool with that? A 4-year registry maintained by the STR operator that Jim can inspect, I guess, whenever he wants and has to somehow enforce.
I can ask for it, and they can show me anything they want.
I think that's a good idea.
It's just a log of visitors. It's more for, I think for our perspective, it was in case there's like police investigations or something or other, that there's just a log
Yeah.
of people's names, their addresses, phone numbers, whatever, who stayed there.
We
Yeah.
probably will not be asking for that.
Yeah, no, there's no way, right? So we think it's a good idea for people to keep registries for safety. That's the gist of it, right? Registries of visitors to Mifflinburg for safety purposes.
I think that was the gist of what the planning commission was thinking.
Okay.
Was that, it was more or less for a case we needed it for some investigative purpose. It was just a log entry.
I think the original, when we looked at it, was a year, and you guys changed. It was 12 months or 24 months, and you guys went further.
Do we think residents should have to have logbooks at their house when they bring guests, so that we know if there's a police incident 3 years, 10 months later? They should have to have it ready on demand. Also, they should have to be ready in 60 minutes, lest they lose their ability to operate their business. That's in here too, right? 60 minutes. If Trace calls, if Jim calls at 2:15 on a Sunday morning, if I don't pick up in 60 minutes, that's strike 1. Dave wants 3 strikes to be 2 years I'm out of business. Are we serious? Guys. Let's go to zoning. I mean, let's go to the districts. This is bonkers.
The 60 minutes was also the standard from
I agree, and it's crazy there too. it's also crazy there.
From the owner, I think was standard in the ordinances that we were looking at, so we didn't think that was anything unusual.
Yeah, we didn't invent this.
Yeah, we didn't make it stricter.
We were asked to do it primarily at the gentleman who's speaking more than anybody else at this meeting.
Are you serious, Mr. Bowman?
His verbalizations, but at the same time,
Mr. Bowman, Mr. Bowman, you are confused, sir. You are confused. You are inherently confused. I spoke numerous times against this ordinance. Colby is the only one with the sense that voted against it. Now that we have it, we might as well try and make it something decent. But
you're welcome to.
But I did not ask for this at all. So the people that gave this to you, Mr. Bowman, no, it did not. The people that gave this to you, okay, are the colleagues, save for Colby, who had the sense to read my memo and vote no. Okay? This was completely unneeded. This was brought on by a person who broke half a dozen other existing rules. And this body decided that the solution to breaking those half a dozen other rules was to pick one rule, which was, I guess, attractive to work on. I don't know. You would have to talk to them. But do not for one moment think that your work the past 10 months after you told me it would take 2.5, I might add, and laughed at me. And Noah grimaced in the room, like, I think it'll take longer than that, Mr. Bowman. Do not think for one moment that it was I that gave this task to you. That's absurd.
Does anybody have any?
Initially, I think it came from the CFA call addressing council better. You guys have been
They
working.
did make a presentation.
We made a presentation to
Yeah,
us.
Rebecca was here.
Rebecca
I was
made a
outside.
presentation.
Yeah, and that presentation made sense that we would be able to create a standard for ourselves. And at the time, our planning commission was we were just reviewing plans, so it was something that we could give the planning commission that we felt was needed, so.
There are a lot of communities that are adopting short-term rental ordinances because they're becoming more popular.
Yeah.
So that's why we got asked, we presented.
Yeah.
One other thing, we talked about the 60 minutes. I think in your rental in chapter 13, housing, it calls up 25 miles.
On the regular housing?
Yes.
Yeah, if you live more than 25 miles away, then you have to have a manager.
Yes, manager agent.
Who lives within that distance.
I mean, I'm sure the chief and I would really like 25 miles instead of standing around for 60 minutes when we have a message, but I don't want to speak to the chief.
Does anyone else have an issue with the 60 minutes? Should that be changed to something?
I think most short-term rentals have a person closer than 60 minutes because there has to be, if you're turning it over, you have to clean it, change things. I could be wrong, but.
From a pure statutory construction purpose, making things consistent, I'd suggest you keep it consistent between the two. And nobody's guessing. Which one was it? Is it 60 minutes or was it 25 miles? And it's all the same.
I like the makes it easy.
So that would be switched to, we must have a manager, if the owner does not live within 25 miles. Right. Although that doesn't necessarily give any sort of impetus of a response.
Yeah.
So just, the owner could be like, yeah, I live with 2 miles away. See you in 4 hours.
Well,
But that's the purpose of it.
the purpose is to make sure somebody is close
Yeah,
enough.
so they can get there if there's an emergency.
Okay.
Just for my purposes, are we in agreement with all of those edits? Am I to draft a new ordinance with those changes made? I need some direction, more specific direction from this group.
Would that happen maybe at the council meeting?
That could. If that's what you'd like me to do, that's fine, because you can't vote right now. So.
do that.
And that would be strike number 2.
I've got them all written down.
Okay.
Here's what I'll do. I'll prepare it, and then you have them to compare. I'll give you a red line version with the changes that were suggested tonight in draft form.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm assuming that when you book a short-term rental, excuse my lack of expertise in this, you're using some app like Airbnb or something of that sort?
Verbo.
Do we know how long that app, like if I have a property that I'm renting, how long they keep the record of who you rented to? And should we just keep it specific to, I do think the 4 years is extremely unreasonable. To have 4 years of records of who's coming and going from that property seems
6
crazy.
months or a year is sufficient. In my opinion.
I think a year is fine.
Especially since any crime that most likely we're
I mean,
gonna
it depends on what it is. The
investigate has
statute
a
of
2 year
limitations may be
statute
up.
of limitation, why are we going to double the 2 year statute of
Is
limitation?
that what it is, 2 years?
I mean, most major crimes.
You think it would show itself before, all right, 2 years.
2?
Okay, 2 years.
Two, what do I hear?
Okay.
It's okay with our chief here.
The other one is really very, very simple. It's just the definitions, which I note the changes to those. And I'll very quickly. Residential suburban district. The planning commission suggests.
Dawn.
What? Oh, bye, Dawn.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Short-term rentals, they decided to put them under conditional use for residential suburban, residential urban. For residential manufacturing housing, it's under a permitted use. For general commercial district, it's under a permitted use. For downtown district, it's a permitted use. For commercial manufacturing, it's a permitted use. And for ag, it is a permitted use.
Okay. Why is it a permitted use in a mobile home community, but a conditional use in what we would consider like the more affluent communities of residential suburban and residential urban? And Don just left, so I think that one potentially goes to you, Linda. That does not make a lot of sense to me.
Oh, gosh, what was our, because we had several meetings discussing these districts.
I think if I remember right, it might have been that just cheap in more residential type districts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, looking at the general vicinity of where the the STR was going to be located, I think is what the planning commission has discussed. Keeping, you know, if it could be tucked away and not a major concern, versus the other districts that have a lot more.
Okay.
Like commercial manufacturing is, I mean, I don't know who would want to be in one there. but
Not talking about. I appreciate you chiming in. I need a policy answer on this one, though. I appreciate it. Why would we be more concerned, right, about the impact in residential suburban or residential urban than residential mobile home?
I do think it was.
Manufactured home.
Oh, in residential.
Mm-hmm. Such that we're going to charge hundreds of dollars, right, and have a conditional use hearing for these folks if they're on Walnut Street or if they're up at Bogart Lane, but not if they're out 8th Street. If they're out 8th Street, they're just good.
If the mobile homes already have kind of transient people in and out anyway, where the residential districts are more stable with their housing and their residents that live there, I think it's, because this is seen as a commercial use, it would be more disruptive in that residential area. So you want to make sure that when they're coming to request to put an STR in those residential areas, if there's anything that we see that you would like to apply to it as a condition so that it is blending in and not being intrusive or obnoxious to their neighbors.
Okay, Linda, I want to encourage you to consider we just messed up as an option to answer this question, because what you just implied, right, is that they're obtrusive to their neighbors. In the wealthy districts, we care and we want you to come before council and have a hearing where we're going to put some reasonable conditions on you.
It has to do with the
What does it have to do? Okay, so if you're in
there's residential houses in these residential
Is a mobile home not a residential home?
In a mobile home, they're more transient. They're more transient in like the mobile home parks.
Linda, you. This is a mistake. You just messed up. It should either be conditional use in all three of those or permitted in all three of those. It needs to be consistent. There's no basis in policy to discriminate between residential suburban, residential urban, and residential manufactured housing district. That is bonkers. To call those things different with respect to permitted or conditional. And I will tell you right now, if we have conditional use on residential suburban and residential urban, and that creates a conditional use hearing requirement that's going to cost hundreds of dollars, why would I ever bring my short-term rental to Mifflinburg when I can go to Limestone Township or West Buffalo Township or any of what are fundamentally our municipal competitors and do it piece of cake? That kills us.
We disagreed a lot on a lot of these districts initially, and there was arguments back and forth and different viewpoints back and forth. Several meetings on these districts. We probably spent 3 or 4 just talking about.
You spent 3.
on these.
I remember. Yeah.
We fleshed it out, and I can't remember all of the different viewpoints and all the different reasonings for each district, but
you want me to tell you what I think? I'm being honest.
It had absolutely nothing to do with wealth. I don't want you to
Yeah, I know that's what folks think. I'm being honest. We're 6 months in. I'm going to be honest, right? This has to do with similarity bias is what this has to do with, right? It has to do with the people on the planning commission thinking, I want more control if these folks are living next to me, but if it's a thing over there, permitted. That's what happened.
No. Initially, I thought, why would we allow this in the agricultural district? I thought, why would we allow that's weird? Is it farming or something? That seems optional. And someone brought it to my attention as well. Yes, these are workers that want to help them with that. That makes sense. And they just things out there like, oh, I had no idea. So what you're saying, if you're bringing up something that we didn't consider, that's totally fine, but don't imply that we're trying to say, oh, I don't want this next to me, or we were judging by someone's wealth capacity. That's ridiculous, and that's insulting. Yes.
Great. I'm saying it is unconscious bias, right? I'm not saying you did it intentionally.
So if you want to bring up your idea,
there you go.
great, but don't come with an attitude with it.
Great. Well, it makes no sense. Makes no sense. You spent 3 meetings on it. This is an ad hominem, but I think the folks in that room are intelligent enough to do it with intention. I don't you did it because you want it to be a little bit harder, right, in residential suburban and residential urban. And then if you made that change, you missed it in residential manufacturing. It doesn't make sense. It needs to be the same.
It makes it easier for residential manufacturing.
Yep. Should be permitted in all 3. If we want short-term rentals in Mifflinburg, permitted in all 3.
What were the exclusions to
It was residential urban and residential suburban. But they were the conditional uses where all the other districts were permitted with the exception of open space. That's not permitted at all. I mean, it's allowed in commercial, obviously, because it's a commercial function anyway. It's allowed in agriculture for reasons I just explained. So things like that.
I think we should just permit it in all of them.
Yeah, I don't know how you can really, there's not a justification you can have for one over the other, in my opinion.
If that's the case, then we can easily permit them in all of them. I mean, you wouldn't even necessarily, except for the industrial district where you don't allow it. It's not even listed as not.
It's just open space.
Yeah, it's just open space. So, I mean, really, we're just saying it's permitted everywhere. So, that's an easy change. That's the rule.
We don't have an industrial district.
No, we don't. Right? Yeah, there's.
CM.
It's permitted in commercial manufacturing. So you can just permit it everywhere. The other item in this ordinance is the off-street parking. Again, it's just one parking spot per dwelling unit. That's the only thing. So that's all I have. I'll get
One parking space
per dwelling unit.
Rental unit?
Dwelling unit. Which is defined in the zoning ordinance.
But if I have a problem with that.
Okay.
I think if you're going to be renting out a space in your dwelling or in a dwelling, there shouldn't be an additional parking space requirement.
It is, it's per unit.
Per unit.
Per dwelling unit.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, never mind. Covered.
So for instance, existing in your, so for wholesale warehousing and manufacturing, you need one parking space for every 2 employees. For rooming or lodging houses, you need one parking space per room. So in this case, it's dwelling unit.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
All right, sorry.
No, you're fine. That's a fair comment.
Yeah, if you're doing an STR, the way it's worded, they have to have one additional space for the STR.
I will make you all a redlined copy of this.
Rob, do you remember any other reasons of why we didn't make it permitted in RS and RU? Why it was different from the...
I just think they were looking, from what I remember, the discussions with planning commission, trying to, being concerned with some of the residential neighborhoods. In the RMH, I questioned why they wanted to allow it there, and they did mention there was some other space out there that, I forget the name of the gentleman that owned the large lot out there, if he would decide to do something, or if someone wanted to rent out a trailer for an STR a mobile home in the mobile home parks, which is possible. So I think that's why, but there was discussion about that as well, about excluding that at one point in time.
Murray, can I ask a question for clarity on this specific ordinance? I know we're adding specifically short-term rentals and we're permitting them within zoning districts. But the only reason I'm asking this is because eventually we'll decide if we advertise this and adopt this. But is this where we would need to change verbiage? The school district asked a while back about changing.
That's in the works.
Yep.
That's in the works.
That's in the works.
Is this the same ordinance? Is that part of the same ordinance?
No.
Actually,
I could add
an amendment for that. That's
Yeah.
My question is if we're planning to open this up.
I could add it to the omnibus one that I put together. That'd be fine.
It just makes sense if we're paying to open it up that we correct all of it at one time.
The only thing though is, I have a feeling, just based on today's discussion, that if we wanted to do the public school change, that was something I was preparing for us to be able to do this month. So I prepared the advertisement last week, and I'll have it to Margaret here soon for review. And
I don't want to mess that up.
So what I'm saying is, I'm happy to add it to that.
I wanted to make sure we were moving forward with the school.
But if we're okay, but it sounded like we might have been okay with everything in that omnibus one, so I can still do that, and we can leave the short-term rental stuff separate. But that just means I will need to advertise the whole thing, and I was not prepared to do that yet, so I still need to send that to county planning as well for their review, and he may have additional comments. I had sent the public school change to Sean. He's like, it's 2 words. Do what you want. We talked on the phone for 5 minutes, and he's a very nice guy. So we worked that out. But so it just may take a little bit more time. I'm fine with that, but this group seemed to want to get that done quickly. So you tell me.
Proceed as normal.
Okay.
Just want to make sure it was in the works.
Well, you are then paying for 2 advertisements. So that's the only thing to note.
This STR might be several more months.
Well, no, I'm talking about I gotta stop calling it that. The catch-all Chapter 29 updates that Rob discussed. That we discussed.
Because of the next agenda item.
Yes.
Crosswalks. I think Tracy had worked with the
Thank
school.
you.
Thanks, Jim.
Did everybody get the response? I think I sent it out.
Yeah.
I have copies of some of them.
Did you see that?
It looks like the biggest intersection was Meadow Green, that and 2nd Street, but it looks like also there was definitely a want to get the red light at Sheets changed so it allows for pedestrians to cross. I don't know what the borough needs to do. in
Change,
terms of
so
that.
it's just all stop.
Yeah, I don't know if you notice, like downtown Lewisburg, if you hit the button, then it counts down, but it stays red in all directions.
Right. That's what I suggested, that I think that's a good for that.
And I think that would be good. I don't know if there's a way to set it on a timer, so it only is that way.
Well, it's gonna be one of those things we gotta run by PennDOT. That's the problem.
Is that something that's capable in the system that's down there?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And PennDOT has to approve it.
Okay.
That's all has to do with timing and our
Yeah.
permits, and it's just not a matter of fact of us going down and pushing a button and programming and it works.
We could get some information, maybe from PennDOT, on what they would require for something like that. They do often require an engineering study to get something like that started, but we could certainly reach out to them and then find out what they would need. And then sometimes it's just, an official blessing from the board. So you'd make a motion to have us officially request it, like, provide a price or something like that for it.
So Fifth Street was not but that was strictly from the
Actually,
school?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, that was school.
okay.
And if you look, actually, Fifth Street was used the least.
I think that's because it's dangerous.
I-
Like, do you think that's what you're seeing in your data?
Daytime is, but
Well, but if it was for
Fifth
schools,
Street is busier, I think, during the daytime.
well, right, but if it's for schools, like the bus picks them up,
Mhm.
like down by the park, and like there's
Yeah.
different stops, so they don't have to cross.
right.
Maybe that's why they were thinking that.
Yeah. Or if you're at Fifth Street, you can just walk a block to the light, which is on the way to school. So I think the data is really good. I think the key next step is Rob with sheets. That was a really good idea. It sounds like we pretty clear evidence they want that. And then I think we paint some version of like first, second, and I do think we should paint fifth. I mean, it's so intuitive. We had an accident there. Dave and I both thought it made sense, which like almost never happens. So
Well, I'm not against Fifth
I
at
think
all.
we might as well paint fifth too.
I can set up a meeting with the traffic signal guy at PennDOT, I can find out what we need to do, it's probably what it's gonna take, and then can come back. I don't know if I can make that happen before council meeting, but at least by the next work session.
Right.
Yeah, do your best.
Question I'm going to ask, I think if you're going to do that and consider that, do you wanna consider doing the one at 4th Street? We all stop. That's probably the next high volume area, just like Lance just mentioned. Because if I'm getting them here, I need to know which signals we're talking
I
about.
don't see none.
I don't
For
think
school
so.
traffic, fourth and fifth were the lowest.
I'd like the
Okay.
gift.
I was
Fourth
just
Street.
saying in general at 4th, because that's probably where probably the downtown, I would say 90% of the people cross.
Yeah.
But you guys tell me, I'm
I think
Is
the
that my- your-
permits for Third and Fourth Street are tied together.
They would have
They
to
are.
be.
But that's, again, why I'm asking the question. 3rd Street, I don't see the pedestrian traffic there, but 4th, definitely, because you have the little parking lot that everybody uses at the church and by the tattoo, well, it used to be tattoo, sorry.
Seamstress, I
I
think.
can't remember what's in there
It's a
now.
little seamstress.
People coming from that little parking area over there to get across, because you have the post office that down there, it's just a high pedestrian.
That's true, because this really
Kathy's.
wouldn't pick it up, because this is geared towards the school.
And we may not be able to do it, but again, if I'm getting him here for a meeting, I need to know if that's something you want me to entertain or not.
The sheets.
Yeah.
Just sheets?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sheets is the big one. and
Sure.
I heard you talking, you got some starting school soon, so you're gonna see it in parent pickup. That intersection is nuts after school.
If you had
Well, and the
really-
buses come out there
If
too.
you had a really busy downtown.
I mean, the
people
foot
were
traffic though is just,
Downtown
yeah.
shopping, then it would make sense for Fourth.
Although downtown shoppers are generally adults.
The only thing, like you said, the bad thing with there were the foot traffic from the schools, they all like walking through the big parking lot at Carriage Corner.
I know, they did the whole
Which
safe
is
route.
not-
Safe routes
and
to
buttons
school,
on the other
they-
side over
yeah,
by
safe
the
routes to school for a lot of money.
Valero.
They don't use it anyway.
Well, I just see parent pickup there, where they're not supposed to, but.
So I'll get something set up and report back when it'll be council meeting or the next work session to find out what I'm gonna do.
Thanks, Rob.
If I'm around, Rob, can you let me know? I'd be curious. to
Sure,
hear what
yeah,
you have to
absolutely.
say.
I'm moving on. Okay, work camp use of park. I noticed conveniently that I neglected to put the date on here, and I can't remember it.
Next year.
It's in 2027. They plan to have the work camp. They came several years ago and did this same thing. They help people in the area. It's a very good thing. With some house repairs that they can't afford or aren't able to do on their own. And they bring a bunch of kids in from different areas and they help with these repairs. And the organizers, I think they'll stay at the school, maybe in the intermediate school if I remember. And then they have things planned for the evenings. And one of the evenings, I think it's Wednesday evening of that week in July that I didn't write down, that they just want to have use of the park, the pavilions, and they've done that before. I asked if they would be interested in perhaps like, oh, we could change the concert, we could talk about lake swimming, we could talk about any of those things to accommodate it. But she said no, they just would have a picnic there because they do go back to the, they go back and they discuss their, I think she called it angel sightings or God sightings. At the, back at wherever they're staying, and so they will come for several hours. So I don't really see a problem with that. We've done it in the past. Of course, it would be no cost or whatever for that. Anybody else have any questions? I promise I'll provide the date at the meeting so we know what we're approving, but I don't know why I didn't put it here. I did the same thing on the next item with the community carnival festival that the Assembly of God Church does. They did it they normally do it the Friday after school's out at the park. They have a community festival down there. They give out free food. They generally have the bouncy houses and a bunch of things for the kids to do and things like that. We've not had any problems with them. It's been a great event, so I hope none of you have an issue with that, but it does have to be approved. The next item, I'm trying to keep us moving now, is the, you approved this summer send-off that MIF-CPAP does. It's the Friday night before the pool closes and also before school starts for the kids around here. We were not able to offer free swim last year because the YMCA did not have enough staffing to handle an event like that. I did run it by the Y. They seem to think they would have the staff in place because of how they've staffed the pool a little bit differently this year. They're using some guards from their other pools, so they thought they would be able to do that. So that's something I'll ask you to approve. And maybe we would let the Y put a limit on how many in the pool at a time and let them handle that in some way. At the last work session, Lance provided a proposal from the Bucknell Economic Department for tax policy study. And I inadvertently left it off with this one. Lance caught it and reminded me. That was the study for different tax structures and things like that. Lance can explain that a little bit better, maybe.
Yep, so it's basically to have two professors at Bucknell who work in political economy, so economics and law. One is Tom Kinnaman, he's the chair of the department, and the other is Christine Yo, who focuses on like rural, she does a lot of like development work, but the places she's focused on are rural communities. They're just usually not in the US. And the premise is that they write a report that explains basically how taxes work. And what the trade-offs are across the board, and then the pieces that are in the write-up that are relevant specifically for Mifflinburg, including how property taxes pass through to renters, and what the impact on our electricity model is across class. It costs $3,000. I just need to get him an answer. So mostly what I'm asking for is a vote. I'm happy to answer any questions, as are they.
Is that cool that an individual council person goes and solicits a bid for some service like this?
Well, you don't need to put out bids for services from experts. You could do it as well. You could suggest somebody, but ultimately it's the council's decision. Now, if this is a contractor for a construction project, no,
Big money, you mean?
No, just professional services in
There's a
general.
difference between professional services and building things, and the code looks at those things differently. Professional services, if you, I'll use myself as an example. If you didn't like me, and Linda said I don't like Noah, I want to go find another attorney, I'd say fair enough, and she could go do that, and then present them to you at a separate time, and or take it to Margaret and say, I think this person would be better. I mean, you can do that with professional services in a way that you can't with contractors. If you do that with contractors and building, then you're violating those particular those codes. So.
All right, thank you.
We haven't done it that way in the past. If in the past we've kind of discussed that kind of work ahead of time, and then you've generally directed one of management to go and get a proposal, and a lot of times we'll do like a scope of what we want them to do, and we would send it out to other professionals, and then bring you the responses for your consideration. So it's a professional service, as Noah said. It's not how we necessarily.
What you can't do is go find this. Linda can't go find this other lawyer and say you're hired, and then they show up here and they're like, I got the job, and you're like, well, no, this group. So that's what you can't do. But that's not what happened.
So I guess what I would ask is what Lance had provided was a brief write-up. And he did mention that if there were additional questions, or if anybody had anything else that they wanted these professors to consider, that we could certainly go to them and request changes or to get additional information. So we could certainly maybe ask that they would come and make a proposal if you wanted, if you had questions that they could answer in person, maybe.
It's been 2 weeks. Are folks able to email? I can ask them to come and propose and speak to the thing if you like. I can ask them to do that. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think the room, myself included at times, really fully understands the trade-offs that we're talking about. So I think it makes sense to ask for expert help. If we want to put it out there for other econ departments, I think that's fine. The reason I chose Bucknell is because they are local and because I think there are problems with what we're doing, and I didn't want to reach out to a journal, right? I can do that if we'd like.
How do you know they're the experts? Just because they work at Bucknell and the professors?
Experts on what? How taxes work?
Et cetera, whatever you're asking them to present to us.
The 5 metrics on how taxes are evaluated. They have a PhD in economics. They teach political economy at one of the top liberal arts universities in the world. They went to Cornell. And what they're going to talk about is stuff that's probably taught in sophomore year.
Have they done this for any other municipalities?
That's a good question. They've done private consulting, but I think you should ask them. My guess would be no. My guess would be no, because this specific ask is focused on a weird situation where we don't have a property tax. So this very fundamental thing that exists in almost every other municipality is much better understood in places not Mifflinburg, because they have historical context for how it works. But that's a good question for Tom. If you email him, he'll answer.
Views are skewed one way or the other?
For me, that's your question. You can just say what you mean.
Yes,
So exactly. So the question is are they going to be biased for me? These folks like their credibility and the fact that they're tenured and the fact that they exist at Bucknell University way more than they like me. They do know me, but they're cold-hearted economists. It is a dismal science. There is no way that they would risk their credibility because Lance Miller wanted them to. But if we want to, we can reach out to Bloom, we can reach out to SU, we can go to a journal. We can put it out as an economic question. I would very highly advise that we do not do that. This is a weird situation that we have here, and I think we should try to resolve it locally, which is why I asked the PME to come.
And I'm going to say I'm sure these people are highly qualified, so would Bloom and all of them, but I just feel until we get a feel if people want property taxes or not for the borough,
What if I told you that I'm just going to do it. Are you guys familiar with what a tyranny of the majority is? Has anyone ever heard of that? Noah,
Can you explain it to us?
Noah probably has, right? It's this premise that there are some things that exist that even if most people think it's a good idea, you still shouldn't do it. And I think there is a real risk, especially with the people who vote, especially with the people who exist in our own sphere of influence, okay, that is what we have here. And if that's not a thing you're familiar with, Google it. Like, you're not gonna hear a bunch of big public outcry that's saying, please give me a property tax and lower electricity rates. Because the folks that are, the reason it's a problem is in parts of the community that are unlikely to be loud and are unlikely to like be the person you interact with on your day to day. So if we sit on this issue, like I don't think this would pass a referendum, right? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Does that make sense? There are a number of issues like that.
Can I comment, please? I've been sitting here quiet. We have a wonderful resource with our local universities, Bucknell being one of them, with amazing intelligence over there. I think we need to investigate how we raise revenue in this borough. And I'm going to say this, and this isn't, Lance doesn't know that I'm going to say this, so it wasn't planned. I've been thinking for a number of years that we cannot survive funding this borough with just electric, sewer, and water rates. I think that's in my opinion, an antiquated method of raising revenue. It worked for us for many, many, many years. And to be quite honest, if you look at it historically, we had a property tax up until about 1935, 1940, somewhere around there. I don't know whether you can correct me on that, but we did. And it was at that time when they realized that they were making a lot of money off of the electric revenue is when they got rid of the property tax. But we had one. So it's not like it never existed here. I think it's our responsibility to be responsible to our citizens and make sure that we are raising revenue as we should and in the fairest way possible. And I think it behooves us to investigate what knowledge, and for $3,000, I don't think that's a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of information that we're going to get from these folks. What we do with it is something different, but I really think that we owe it to our citizens and to ourselves to hear that, what they may bring. And like I said, we may decide to stay with what we have, but we also may discover that there's something better. And I think it's worth investigating.
May I ask some questions? So I'm just trying to think of the timing here.
Yep.
Did they give you an idea of how long this study would take, what information you would need to do it?
They're not going to need, I don't think, more than what's already publicly available, which is quite a lot. This is basically like a private class, more or less what we're paying for. The things they're going to talk about are known. They in their write-up, they describe it as accepted fact. Now, like, whether anything in economics is a fact or not is a different kind of discussion, but this is knowledge that they already have. They're just going to codify it for us. So timing-wise, I'll cut to, I think, where your head is going. I think we are past the point where in the 2027 budget, we can make a shift, right? Which I think is kind of where heads are at, right? Okay. But, like, this should be a big discussion, right? There will be people, if we make this change, that are upset. There will be losers. What I think we will realize is that there have been people who have been winning for a very long time at the expense of folks in the community that should not have been losing, right? And we will not see that, right, if in our own circles we hang out with the winners. And we ourselves are probably the winners. It depends a little bit. That is the gist of it. And I think you're timing wise, I don't think we can change this for 2027. It will happen too fast, and if we tried to, it would be a big mistake. But 2032, after the census, I also think is too slow. There is harm, in my opinion, that is occurring, and we should address that.
I basically have the same sentiment as Matt. You speak it better than I do, but my issue is, and I didn't make it on the agenda, so I will speak it now, is I feel as if at our council meetings, in our work sessions, and in our regular sessions, there's a lot of issues that we are working on simultaneously that I feel is taking away from things that are, in my view, more important. So I would like us to be able to prioritize all these issues that are coming before us, so we're not faced with a fire hose every single time we come to a meeting, and we're sitting here for 3 hours, and we're trying to work on everything all at once. To me, this tax issue, although it's important, in my view, is not as important as the sewer issue that we have not talked about at all, and it is 8:30. So that's my beef. I want us to work on things that I think we as a collective group feel is our most important issues. And you can work on other things simultaneously if they don't take as much time and if they have a large impact or something. This, I think, has merit, but I don't think it needs to be worked on today. We also spent a whole lot of time on PMPA, which I don't even know why they were here. Was that a priority? In my view, it was not. We spent time on that. Yes, I think this tax investigating the tax structure.
Yes.
I think we need to do
I'll
it.
give you more.
I think we should do it a year from now, it'll be okay. To me personally, I think we should focus on the sewer. Focus on the sewer, big things that are big problems. And right after the sewer comes water. Electric, in my view, is last of all of our utilities. We have a problem with the sewer, and we're gonna need some water. We're gonna need a water source. In my view, that's the order of the utility problems we have. Electric's last, and tax is down there with it.
But it may have ramifications on how we raise our revenue to take care of those.
Yes, exactly, I know.
Not to dispute you.
I know.
I mean, I get where you are.
I know.
Is
You
it,
know, I'll look into it.
is
Yes,
this,
thank you.
Lance,
Yep.
is this something that we really have to do?
What I would tell you,
No.
you understand?
I do, but
Okay.
vaguely.
And also, like, how much is in our capital reserve?
Here's what I
There's
will.
various things, there's a lot
Here's-
of fire hose effect.
Here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say in terms of the priorities.
And I do know you brought this up in the very
I-
first meeting of the year, and I did not forget that. I didn't feel it was an appropriate topic for our reorganization meeting. I did feel it was an appropriate topic for our work sessions, because I do feel it's important for us to prioritize how we go about doing our business.
Here's what I'll say. I very much appreciate the work Linda is especially trying to push on in sewer. From my personal perspective, I think I can work myself across the venues. My willingness to slow down on some of these things is varied, right? On electricity and sewer, my willingness to slow down is very varied. Part of the reason why we have such a mismatch on electricity across this group is because there's strong difference in how big of an issue it is. I think it is a tremendous issue. I'm going to continue to work to try and make that point. This item is part of that next step. Believe it or not, I'm trying to go slow. I'm trying to bring everyone along, right? Having other people explain in a written document that folks can take away and can read on a Saturday afternoon, can read at their own leisure, I think will be very valuable. So what I'm asking for at our next meeting is that commitment, right? The commitment is, I want to learn. I want to understand this. At what pace makes sense? I've already said, I'll acquiesce, right, that we're not going to make it for 2027. It's just not going to happen. If I thought I was going to be able to do that, I was living in Fantasyland, right? But we have, in my view, continue to make progress on it, because I think it's a bigger deal than folks realize. And the reason I invited the PMEA here was to try and impress on folks that not only are we unique in the being one of 35, we are one of 3 that choose to use electricity as a tax. And that electricity as a tax is really problematic. Like, I cannot ignore that until the sewer is done. I just can't, right? Or I'll lose.
I can only focus on so many things.
Well, then what?
And I think this is problematic, that you just said, I invited the PMEA here to tell you folks this. They're not your pawns. You don't get to say, hey, you two drive up here. Well, how far did they come? 100 miles? I don't know where they came from.
I do
to
agree.
make a point for you? That is inappropriate.
I do appreciate
Interesting.
that you are very.
Thank you.
You see things that we don't see, and you're trying to get us to see what you see. I understand that, and we're all that way. We feel passionate about it. I'm the same way with the sewer. I want us to focus on sewer. So I understand you have passion, and you may be seeing things that we don't know, and you're trying to educate us on that. And I appreciate that. It's just, I need more methodical approach to things. That's how my brain works. I need only so many things at a time so that we can work on those things well, and not a whole lot of things all at the same time, not well. And then everything's all kind of
Half-assed?
I just need, I need more methodical approach
Sure.
to things and a more priority order, and we need to establish what that is as a group, because what I may think is priority might not be what the whole group thinks is priority, and that's okay,
I agree with Linda. I think it's a lot.
Yeah.
You and I had this
You have
conversation
a lot of great
before,
ideas.
I fill up very fast.
So here's what I'll tell you guys.
Can I finish?
Here-
Can I finish, please? Dave, I don't mean to disagree, but I think the resource that Lance brought us tonight, I think was a good thing. I think it was good for us to listen to what they had to bring. I learned something. I hope other folks did, but I had no idea. I'm still trying to grasp all this electric stuff, and anything that anybody can bring to us to help us understand that, I'm thankful for. I was thankful for tonight. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I think that was valuable for us to have that experience. How it got here, we can dispute that. I don't know. Where do we go? Can we
Just give me a vote.
I was gonna say, that can't happen tonight.
Yep, just give me a vote in 2 weeks.
What I was trying to get to, if I could finish my thought from before, I wasn't really done.
What's that mean?
It's all good. I serve at your leisure. The timing piece is where I'm struggling, because you can't vote on it till next month.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a month to get it back to us, maybe, okay? So, or vote on it till 2 weeks, not a month. Vote in July, maybe have it back to look at in August, and we're way too late to do anything this year.
Yep.
So my concern was that everybody be on the same page about that we can see that we either vote to have them or we don't, because I think we're at the point of no return this year for 27 for real estate taxes. I'm just trying to
I agree.
pull it all together. So I wanted to put that out there. And then if we're having them, Bucknell, do this study for us or presentation for us, whatever you want to call it, we know what Lance has discussed with them. That's in the document that he did. But is there anything else that anyone else would like to have included in that? Because let's only do this once. So is there anything else that you've looked at that you want to add to it? I'm just trying to, let's try to be, move forward, but kind of do it thoughtfully. So, how about this? How about I resend the document that Lance gave us, and you all take a look at it and see if there's anything else that you would like them to look at. Keep in mind that we will have the sewer study that's also being done, that's also gonna be about rates and all those things. So we've got a lot going on. Remember, I asked for the electric study last year, and that's kind of been, I mean, a more comprehensive one than we did for the rates. That's just been sidelined. So I'm just bringing that up and saying that's something else. And I think it almost has to be sidelined at this point because the $47,000 wasn't really in the sewer fund for the rate study. I had included the studies across the funds near audit because it would, at the original time when we did the budget, we discussed that it would be done kind of with the audit, so.
I do think that
Just
if you're considering this, being informed about property tax, I think it's also important to understand how being in a contract until 2032 with electric and rates and how that's going to affect. So a rate study would be appropriate to study in tandem with information provided for the property tax, because essentially we're going to burden our constituents with, I think it's going to be counterintuitive at first, maybe in the long run it'll offset rates, but till 2032 or 2035, when that contract ends, we're still going to have high rates and property tax. So I think it'd be good to study both of those at the same time while making a decision. I did have one more question for Lance. How did you come to these two professors?
Pickleball. Pickleball and Google, believe it or not.
I'm sorry, what?
Pickleball.
Pickleball.
Yeah. Met him at pickleball. Kinnaman is like a waste guy. He's big on like recycling and how that affects everything, but yeah.
And like kind of piggybacking off of that, getting back to my methodical approach, if we have pickleball, when would we as a group think that we would want to enact the tax? If we were going to put a tax in place, what year would we want to start that? And then kind of work backward from there to know when would we need to make decisions, when do we need to have information, when we need to do all these various things in, put all these various things in place so that we can enact it on the year that we want to enact it. Because then we'll know when we need to start something. Personally, I don't think we need to invite these people in at our next couple of meetings, because to me, I don't think is the priority based on when we want to enact this tax. If we want to enact a tax by year 2030,
I'm not saying that we want to enact
I know, but if we did.
I'm just saying it's worth investing.
Right, but if we did, when would we want to do it? Then back up
God,
from
I don't
there.
know. It could be
So-
when I'm dead.
So,
I don't know. I'm just saying.
I mean, we're not gonna do it in 2027, we already decided that, so if it's 2028, we think if we're gonna do it.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to make light of your concern. I
So
just,
let's, listen, what I'm thinking is
not-
we can table this for 6 months and be okay,
I think
We
it's still
don't need
important to have
do
the information.
thank you.
This is the
At the
problem we
expense
have.
of all the other
The problem we
information
have
we
is we
need to
kick the
have.
can down the road, and then we get to the punchline and we don't have the information we need to make a decision. So let's get the information, and then decide which route we're gonna take. But if we don't have the information, we can't make an informed
So we're
decision.
not focusing on the things that we need to focus on that is the more priority in my mind.
It's a lot. I know.
Well,
All right,
I have a,
so Margaret's gonna resend this out, and if there's other additions,
yeah.
they can be added.
I think I have an idea. What if we just always put sewer first on the agenda? So it's not a cartoon, right? Like Linda's point is super valid, right? That like we're burned out, right? It's been 3 hours. This is a hard meeting. This is a very hard meeting. Let's not kid ourselves, for everybody, right? And now we're going to try and talk about the sewer stuff, and it's 8. So what if, like, we always, if sewer is going to be discussed, which it probably always should be, right? We just put it first. And we say we're going to cap sewer at an hour or something, right? I'm not willing to drop electricity, but I agree that the sewer is more important. I do. So I mean,
So we're gonna vote on number 7 next meeting.
next meeting, yeah.
Well, first you're gonna look and see if there's anything else you want to include in that study from them. Then you would vote. If there's anything in between, you maybe have to reach out to them to see if they wanted to alter their proposal. Or needed to alter.
Or if they're comfortable with that part of it.
All right, I'm gonna move on and I'm gonna try to make some stuff quicker, whether you like it or not, because I'm feeling done too. So, discussion regarding public sewer communications plan. I put it on there as a placeholder. Lance has some ideas, and I think we can send it out.
Yeah, it's fine.
And people can read it.
I think it's fine. I sent it to Linda first because it's huge, and this is like exactly what Linda is exceptionally good at. She's already shown that with the Parks and Rec stuff. So I sent it to Linda. I sent it super late, which I apologize for. But yeah, exactly. It's beefy. Yeah. So exactly. So I think it makes sense. But we didn't. It was a purpose and intent, but we didn't have alignment last time on that we were ready for this or easy for that. So that's why I asked for this to be on the agenda, but I would happily have this communications item be usurped by the items that you sent, which were like, are there updates? You asked for updates on like the doing of stuff. So could we do that instead of sewer communications and then let maybe Linda and I work a little bit on like structure and like how to provide a proper plan brief stuff. Is that fair?
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I will say about the discussions about where things stand is that I think, and I alluded to this, that's an executive session matter, and that's why it's at the end.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
Just because of where we stand in that process. So we'll get there. You two can work on the communications plan, and we'll put it on the August work
By
session.
the way, I will not be here for the August work session, so I'll have like hip surgery 2 days before. I will not be here.
I will say this, right? Like this goes into the next one. Like folks, I'm being very open with people about what I perceive the scope of the sewer problem. So there are aspects of communication that are not within the control of the folks in this room as we go out and pursue grants and talk about things, right? Like if I say out loud, or a member of our team here says out loud that we have a problem that's going to cost tens of millions of dollars and a reporter hears that, they can print it. Right? If I go into a room and I say, hey, we're trying to get grant money, we're committed to doing our fair share, which means raising rates, I can say that that's on behalf of one of 6. I said that today, but like I cannot control if someone repeats that or prints that. So that's something folks need to be aware of with respect to communication. I'm not going to slow down on advocacy because of the communication control. It's just a thing that is tough. So if there are talking points, right, we need them fast. But like in these conversations to advocate for grant money, I'm telling the truth. And I can't control if those people repeat it or not. So that's something to be aware of.
Okay. 26-27 CDBG grant application. So the meeting at the the meetings at the
Government Center.
Thank you. Today, the commissioners, that's the word I was looking for, commissioners, was today the first work session on it. Lance, Rob, and I were there to advocate for our project. Not sure how I think it went.
It was a hard room. They asked hard questions, which, yeah, it was tough.
So it was tough.
Which project is this again?
What's that?
Which project is this again?
So we applied for community development block grant funds, and Bogar Lane was the area that we looked at because it was within the low to moderate income group block that they gave us.
Census block group number 1.
Yeah.
Okay, that's that.
So in addition to that, we were going to put together a project that would be submitted to CDBG funds for the competitive, well, it's all competitive, but for the February 27th submission date that is actually more for, like, it's more competitive across the state rather than just within the county. Rob's been working at that. I think that's another $531,000.
Yep.
See,
And that was a WAG, so CDBG got asked us to come up with a kind of a WAG to give some background information to the county here, that we're working for a bigger project as well that would go hand in hand with the one we were meeting on today. And again, we looked in that block group number 1 area, which is the eastern part of the borough, that Shipton, Laney, East Green Street area. So the engineer and I come up with, I gave him some footages and he came up with a WAG here to be able to talk a little bit about it.
So the thing that, I don't know, maybe is what's concerning is, this is just me speaking, but I felt like it wasn't as well received at the county, and that can impact how it goes with the state, because they're kind of together. We tried. That's what I'll say. We tried hard.
What all does that entail? Does that entail sewer and water and?
It's just sewer.
Just sewer.
Okay, budget discussion.
Yeah, we can probably punt on most of the substantive matters since where we're at in the room. I'll send out a doc I had planned. Basically, what I would like is for I'd like for us to be able to talk about this more. I know Colby has championed that a few times. It's just tough to do with how the actual cycles work. I understand that. So I have some prompting questions. Margaret has been giving us actuals by quarter now across GL. So if we can get those, even if folks have an area of the borough's operations that you're passionate about, maybe it's water and sewer, maybe it's parks and rec, if you can narrow in on that section of the ledger and start to think about what, if any, changes would you want, that will be greatly helpful so that we have more of a discussion, right, and more input to help Margaret and all of us put this together than the way it feels like perhaps it's been done in the past. That was the gist of the item. I have more specific questions. I can email it out to everyone. I can also clear it through you if you'd like first.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah. So that can be that item.
Project updates, Rob.
I'll try and fly through these. Cherry Alley Sewer Project, the final pay app. Just letting you know, the project is complete. As of 7/6, we did a final walkthrough. They're hoping to actually close out the project, so if they're able to pull their paperwork together, we will have a final, or a change order and then the final pay app, because that adjusts the quantities. And all indications are right now it's going to be under budget as to what the project costs were. We were way under budget as far as what the estimated cost of the project, so we're getting lower the way it looks right now. H2O Project, the booster station has been delayed. The actual building itself, we found out here about 2 weeks ago. Got an update from the builder that's doing the prefab booster station. It will not be here till October. So that is concerning, and it's messed with construction and our grant deadline, because we've got to expire those grants by September, or that grant by September. So we're working with the state to try and come up with all the invoicing we can from the engineering standpoint. I've already talked to our contractor, told them to order materials, because they can get paid for materials stored. So the idea is we'll try and expire the $500,000 here in time. What that does to construction, though, normally the building would be set and then we would build the water line, because this involves the water line up and over Old Orchard. So we're going to go out of order, and we think we can build it without like a big change order, any kind of big change order to construct the water line ahead of the building getting here. And we will put the line in service. We had a couple meetings now already with the contractor, so we're trying to proceed, and they've already got notice to proceed, and they're going to begin late this month, is what I was told. Walnut Street project update. We had the pre-con was last week, and they also told me they would be beginning late July. So if you have any vacations planned, you may want to leave town for July, because it's going to be a busy construction month here. And they have all their insurances and everything, so they're going to be starting here soon on Walnut Street. 88 Corners, again, had the pre-con the last week in June, and they are going to start probably next week. He was going to call me, and we're meeting tomorrow, look at a couple things rather, and then they told me they'd probably be starting. CFA Sewer Project, this is the one I'm disappointed about. I've been talking with Margaret and mentioned this project is way behind. This is the same engineer that I've been having some issues with. I'm gonna have probably a sit down or come to Jesus meeting, however you want to word it, with him here directly where we are, because he's way behind schedule. That was supposed to be built here by the fall, but he's not even done with the design yet, and it was supposed to be out to bid by this month. So it's a very short project as far as the time frame. It's doable, but he dropped the ball again, and I'm quite frustrated.
So is that one that we can add to the list as far as like declaring them no?
Declaring what?
Like that we don't use them the next time? for a
I'm not
project?
planning. The only reason we went and had him do this, he was the one who did the grant project for us.
Okay.
He wrote that.
He wrote the grant, wrote the grant application. He said project, wrote the grant application. I won't use them again unless you guys direct me to.
Okay.
I'm going to avoid them at all costs. And I've had conversations with his president of the company. So
Okay.
CFA Sewer other updates I had, just a note here, we had a meeting here regarding with the school district and their project, and we have a game plan to, I think, hopefully work on doing the testing of the lines. I'll let you know, I don't think Dr. Dave is real happy. There's some things that they're going to have to do, and Paul and are looking, this is the testing of the existing water lines that they have that we're going to take ownership of. 2 of the fire hydrants of the 4, I think there's 4 total, there's either 4 or 5. 2 of those do not meet borough standards. So they're older and we can't get parts for them. So in order for us to accept them, our specs say they have to be this type of fire hydrant, and they're going to have to replace some hydrants, and he was not happy. So I wouldn't be surprised if he would show up at the next council meeting. I don't know, because it's going to be an added cost for them. The hydrants themselves, about $5,500, $6,000 just for the hydrant, because it's just it's a hydrant and a barrel that goes down to the connect on, and it's the labor associated with it. So you're probably looking at about $10,000 for installation. And the last thing I want to mention is Legacy, part of the Ritz-Craft umbrella, the Legacy facility had to do a little land development plan. You will have a stormwater maintenance agreement thing that you'll have to approve, just like did those developers agreements for sheets. And they had the same thing, a developers agreement and a stormwater maintenance agreement. They have that stormwater maintenance agreement that coming before council. Other than that, that's all.
Okay, concession stand updates, things seem to be going pretty well.
Awesome.
Hot dog sales.
Their hot dogs are going.
How are they doing?
They're selling hot dogs like hotcakes.
No,
I understand that the soft pretzels are a big hit too. So there you have it.
Where did you end up getting them from?
Amazon.
Where?
Amazon.
They're hot dogs? They're all packed
No.
separately. That was freezing. And they say they're not even bad. The guys down there at the Y said, yeah.
That's great.
So, hey,
There's
I
a
looked
tip
at
for your
this
kids.
at the reviews.
They come pre-salted.
Just funny. Anyway, I also wanted to kind of remind y'all, oh yes, we have the new computer software for the finance. We've started with that. Definitely going to be a learning curve. We had very little training, probably about 4 hours online training.
Online? It wasn't even a person that came.
No.
Oh,
So that's been fun. So there's a learning curve. Please be patient. I don't promise the reports or anything are going to look the same for a while. You got to give us some space. And it is a bit stressful. It's kind of funny. It's not, but it's.
Can they like? Is there a way to like play with it so they get better?
So they did give us, which is pretty cool. They gave us a demo, training part of it, so you can kind of try to figure things out on the training.
Like a
And-
sandbox.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt anything, and then
Oh,
you can
good.
try it for real on the, and we also found that we can copy from the real one, when we get to a point where we're not sure, we can copy it and drop it into the training part, do it there and see if it does what we want it to do. But it's just a lot of extra work to try to figure it all out, it's kind of learn as you go, and it's very different. We'll adapt.
Good.
In time, that's what I'll say, be patient. And then I have some stuff for executive session. I'm gonna try to be really, really quick.